rat.
And I'm at that, yeah. So, welcome back everyone. As of today, we are back to my beautiful, normal, soothing tones, and none of that nonsense of talking close into the mic. At least not until you get me to 50 followers. Speaking of followers, as always, first bit of business, I do have someone to thank this week. Thank you to Nakari Omi for the follow, which happened between things. I do sometimes wonder why so many of my followers come between streams. I'm sure there's a reason for it, and it's probably because people prefer to watch my things as VODs rather than as live streams, given that we basically do audio books. But yeah, one step closer. Only 2 away now, so you could theoretically get it ready by next Torrid Tuesday. Assuming that you... actually, all of you are followed that I know are in chat, so... I guess you've got to go bully your friends into following me, is I guess what I'm advocating for. That's a little messed up now, I think about it. Anyhow, right, so... follow thanked, no badges to push. Next up is, we've got... go up here and congratulate Abe for getting her first. 18 there. One more of these and you get a second X. Which I I don't know why that feels significant, but it does feel significant. But yeah, still, it's not as one-sided as it's always been. So, I do thank everyone for attempting at least. You'll get there one day, Fitz, I'm sure of it. And yeah, no new books to share to you today. At least no new ones since the last stream. I'm still trying to find a copy of The Hobbit I can get my hands on, but yeah, it's surprisingly tough. So, and normally this is where I would do a little bit of sort of preamble before we got started on the text. But today's text I do think feels, I do think calls for a little bit of an introduction. Hang on, get a quick drink of water. But yeah, like I say, today's text I think calls for a bit of an introduction. So the plan is we're going to do that before we start getting into the thing, which will probably take time. So a while back I showed you that I'd gotten these 4 books here. The Analects, the Book of Lord Shang, the Mosey, and the Tao Te Ching. Tao Te Ching. Not exactly sure how you pronounce it. And that these was the core texts of the 4 major Eastern philosophies, or specifically China's philosophies, namely Confucianism, being the Analects, which are by the name of Confucius, the Book of Lord Shang being related to the philosophy of legalism, the Mosey being by, Mosey, and relating to the philosophy of Moism, sometimes called universalism, and the Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu being in relation to the philosophy of Taoism. Now each of these is sort of a different view on the nature of the world, and has been very influential on Eastern culture, especially Chinese culture, over the years. And so I thought going through them individually and sort of talking about them and how they come to be interesting. They're all very old. I think the latest of them dates maybe 200-ish BC, and the rest of them is even older. So these have been like long time like influences on the culture. And there are, of course, these are much studied books. There's lots of different opinions and takes on them, interpretations, and even translations. So I'm not going to claim that what we're going to be doing is a definitive sort of look at the philosophies behind these. These are just core texts, and we're going to be going over them and sort of trying to have an idea. Yeah, but just to give a little bit of grounding, today the one we're going to be going over is the Analects of Confucius. I don't know if we're going to finish it today. It's not super long, but it is about 100 pages, which is normally probably 2 streams worth of reading. But the way it's formatted is it's a fairly short little snippet, so it might be quicker than usual. So we'll see how we go. It's probably either a 1 or a 2 stream book anyway. I don't think it's straight to 3. And the philosophy behind Confucianism basically argues that everyone should know their place in society. It is a philosophy that primarily concerns itself with placement in society and the order of things, with the idea that being that as long as each person sticks to their place, things will work better. You should look to your superiors and to your family in much the same way, and give backs to them. And it's primarily concerned in a lot of ways with the virtue of filial piety. It's the piety of the son to the father, or the daughter to the father, upwards reaching, although it is supposed to be a 2-way street. Confucius, of course, the author of the thing, again, sort of semi-mythical figure, lived round about the 400 BC, I believe, and this is supposedly rather than being a book that he actually wrote, is a collection of quotes and other discussions that he had by his students and pupils, which was published after his death as a way to preserve his teachings. And so it's sort of structured like that. Rather than being long passages, it's sort of broken down into individual paragraph-like bits, and then broken down further into books, which are sort of dividing the various quotes and insights into various subjects and sort of general gathering of them. And there's 20 books total, so we'll try and get through as many of them as we can today. He's also somewhat famous as the guy who is often attributed with quotes on fortune cookie papers. So if you ever had a fortune cookie and it said something and then had like a little thing that attributed to Confucius, this is that guy, and this is probably the book where it comes from. See, I come down here to give my little precursor talk on this, and I expected it to take longer, because, you know, it's a very significant text, and I feel like I should know things about it. But it's been 5 minutes, and I've basically said everything I had to say on the subject. So yeah, well, also this is a fairly easy one to jump into, since it's not any great like sort of ongoing narrative, so I guess it doesn't matter so much if we start a little early, so I'll have a drink of water and then break into my normal preamble, shall I? So, as always, if as I'm going along you've missed something, either because of a technical issue, because I've murmured something, audio things, any given reason, and you need me to go back over something, let me know, I'm happy to do that. If you have comments, thoughts, questions, do feel free to drop them. Given that this one's quite sporadic and full of pauses, I'm probably happy to answer them as we go. Happy to have a chat as we're going along. I will probably be pausing after every book of this text to do a little bit of thought and reflection on the various passages we've read. Yeah, and as always, I'm very happy to hear from you. I'm very happy to have a discussion, especially again as this is a text on philosophy. Love to hear back from you and get your sort of thoughts and discussion in this sort of field. Other than that, I don't think there's much else to say. So, without any further ado, if you are sitting comfortably, I shall begin. Oh, I've disappeared. Oh, and I'm back. I gotta figure something out about that. That keeps happening. Oh, and now I appear to be frozen. Oh, and now I'm gone again. You know what? Let's ignore it and hope it fixes itself, shall we? That's all we can really do. There we are, okay. So, the Analects, Book 1, Concerning Fundamental Principles. The Master said, "Is it not indeed a pleasure to acquire knowledge and constantly to exercise oneself therein? And is it not delightful to have men of kindred spirit come to one from afar? But is not he a true philosopher who, though he be unrecognised to men, cherishes no resentment?" The philosopher Yu said, he who lives a filial life, respecting the elders, who yet is wishful to give offence to those above him, is rare. And there has never been any one unwishful to offend those above him, who has yet been found to creating disorder, or been fond of creating disorder. The true philosopher devotes himself to the fundamentals, for when those have been established, right courses naturally evolve, and are not filial devotion and respect for elders the very foundations of an unselfish life? The Master said, artful speech and an ingratiating demeanour rarely accompany virtues. The philosopher Sang said, I daily examine myself on 3 points. In planning for others, have I failed in conscientiousness? In intercourse with friends, have I been insincere? And have I failed to practice what I have been taught? The Master said, to conduct the government estate of 1,000 chariots, there must be religious attention to business and good faith, economy and expenditure, and love of the people, and their employment on public works at the proper seasons. The Master said, when a youth is at home, let him be filial, when abroad, respectful to his elders. Let him be circumspect and truthful, and, while exhibiting a comprehensive love for all men, let him ally himself with the good. Having so acted, if he have energy to spare, let him employ it in polite studies. Zhu Xia said, he who transfers his mind from feminine allurement to excelling in moral excellence, who in serving his parents is ready to do so to the utmost of his ability, who in the service of his prince is prepared to lay down his life, and who in intercourse with his friends is sincere in what he says, though others may speak of him as uneducated, I should certainly call him educated. The master said, "A scholar who is not grave will not inspire respect, and his learning will therefore lack stability. His chief principle should be conscientiousness and sincerity. Let him have no friends unequal to himself, and when in the wrong, let him not hesitate to amend." The philosopher Seng said, "Solicitude on the decease of parents and the pursuit of this for long after will cause an abundant restoration to people's morals." Zhu Qin inquired of Zhu Kung, saying, "When the master arrives at any state, he always hears about its administration. Does he ask for this information, or is it tendered to him?" "The master," said Zhu Kung, "is benign, frank, courteous, temperate, deferential, and thus obtains it. The master's way of asking, how different it is from others." The philosopher Yu said, "In the usages of decorum, it is naturalness that is of value. In the regulations of the ancient kings, this was the admirable feature, both small and great, deriving therefrom. But there is a naturalness that is not permissible, for the know to be natural and yet to be so beyond the restraints of decorum is also not permissible." The philosopher Yu said, "When you make a promise consistent with what is right, you can keep your word. When you show respect consistent with good taste, you keep shame and disgrace at a distance. When he in whom you confide in is one who does not fail his friends, you may trust him fully." The master said, "The scholar who in his food does not seek the gratification of his appetite, nor in his dwelling is solicitous of comfort, who is diligent in his work and guarded in his speech, who associates with the I principle and thereby directs himself aright. Such a one may really be said to love learning." "What do you think," asked Zhu Kung, "of the man who is poor yet not servile, or is rich and yet not proud?" "He will do," replied the master, "but he is not equal to the man who is poor and yet happy, or rich and yet loves courtesy." Zhu Kung remarked, "The ode says this is like cutting and then filling, like chiseling then grinding. That is the meaning of your remark, is it not?" "Zhu," said the master. "Zhu," said the master. "Now indeed I can begin to talk with him about the odes, but when I tell him the premise, he knows the conclusion." The master said, "I will not grieve that men do not know me. I will grieve that I do not know men." That's the end of the book 1 concerning fundamental principles. Interesting. You can see what I mean about the ideas of filial piety, about respecting your seniors and elders, being pretty core to the philosophy. There's some parts of this that I find very, I agree with very heavily and that I think are very compelling, especially that last line. "I will not grieve that men do not know me, I will grieve that I do not know men." I think it's very strong. There are a couple of bits that I'm not entirely cogent with, although I think some of that might be down to translation. Specifically, "The scholar who in his food does not seek the gratification of his appetite" seems kind of wild to me, because I mean, the whole point of eating food is to gratify your appetite, otherwise you'd just be hungry. I'm sure it's meant as sort of a metaphorical, the appetite of good food come to taste it, but that does strike me as a bit of odd phrasing, which again I suspect is down to translation. But yeah. Drink of water and then we press on. Book 2, concerning government. The master said, "He who governs by his moral excellence may be compared to the pole star, which abides in its place while all the stars bow towards it. The master said, though the odes number 300, one phrase can cover them all, namely, with purpose underverted. The master said, if you govern the people by laws, and keep them in order by penalties, they will avoid the penalties, yet lose their sense of shame. But if you govern them by your moral excellence, and keep them in order by your dutiful conduct, they will retain their sense of shame, and also live up to this standard. The master said, at 15 I set my mind upon wisdom, at 30 I stood firm, at 40 I was free from doubts, at 50 I understood the laws of heaven, at 60 my ear was docile, at 70 I could follow the desires of my heart without transgressing the right. Speaking of transgressing the right, hello Vocalo Marino. Why is it you think that morally you can come into people's streams and advertise a service that actively destroys the planet and does nothing but forward misinformation and deceive people? Tell me if you're still here actually and not just a bot who's come to post this. Perhaps a foolish thing to ask. Another lesson in philosophy. A being that cannot think and has no morals of its own cannot be trusted. Now where were we? When Meng Azu asked what filial duty meant, the master answered, it is not being disobedient. Afterwards, when Fan Shi was driving him, the master told him, saying, Meng Sen asked me what filial piety meant, and I replied, not being disobedient. Fan Shi thereupon asked, what did you mean? The master answered, while parents live, serve them rightfully. When they are dead, bury them with filial rites, and sacrifice to them with proper ordinances. When Meng Wu Po asked what filial duty meant, the master answered, parents should only have anxiety when their children are ill. When Zhu Yu asked the meaning of filial piety, the master said, the filial piety of the present day merely means to feed one's parents, but even one's dogs and horses receive their food. Without reverence, wherein lies the difference? The master said, I could talk to Hui for an whole day and, as if he was stupid, he never raised an objection. But when he withdrew and I examined into his conduct when not with me, I nevertheless found him fully competent to demonstrate that I had taught him. Hui, you were not stupid. The master said, observe what he does, look into his motives, find out in what he is at peace. Can a man hide himself? Can a man hide himself? The master said, he who keeps on reviewing is old and acquiring new knowledge may become a teacher of others. The master said, the higher type of man is not a machine. You see, the bot couldn't even come in on that line, that would have been perfect. They ruin everything. The higher type of man is not a machine. I should get that tattooed. On Zhu Kung asking about the nobler type of man, the master said, he first practices what he preaches, and afterwards preaches according to his practice. The master said, the nobler type of man is broad-minded and not prejudiced. The inferior man is prejudiced and not broad-minded. The master said, learning without thinking is useless. Thinking without learning is dangerous. The master said, to divert oneself to irregular speculations is decidedly harmful. The master said, you, shall I teach you the meanings of knowledge? When you know a thing, to recognise that you know it. When you do not, to know that you do not know. That is knowledge. Zhu Chang was studying with a view to preferment. The master said to him, "Hear much, be reserved in what causes you down, and speak guardedly of the rest. You will then suffer little criticism. See much, be reserved in what seems imprudent, and act guardedly as to the rest. You will then have few regrets. With little criticism in your speech, and little to regret in your conduct, herein you will find preferment." Duke R inquired, saying, "What should I do to ensure the contentment of the people?" "If you promote the upright and dismiss the ill-doer," replied Confucius, "the people will be contented. But if you promote the ill-doer and dismiss the upright, the people will be discontented." When Chi Kang Zhu asked how to inspire the people with respect and loyalty, so they might be mutually emulous for the welfare of the state, the master said, "Lead them with dignity, and they will also be dutiful. Be filial and kind, and they will be loyal. Promote those who excel, and teach the incompetent, and they will encourage each other." The master said, "A man who is without good faith, I do not know how he is to manage. How can a wagon without its yoke bar for the ox, or a carriage without its collar bar for the horses, be made to move?" The master said, "The sacrifice to a spirit of an ancestor, not one's own, is sycophancy. To see the right and not do it is cowardice." That's the end of book 2 on governance. As usual, I have my quick drink and do some talk. What I think is interesting here, and I will note, is that in addition to speaking of the way to govern the people and manage them, and of course to the virtues that underlie good governance, a number of the parables and proverbs in this book on governance also have to deal with education, specifically in seeking preference and in the pointlessness of thought without knowledge the pointlessness of thought without study, or study without knowledge. Thought without learning, and learning without thought, I should say. Getting all mixed up. But yeah. I mean, it's a pretty obvious conclusion to draw the link between the two, but it is interesting. It is made so explicit. Understanding is vital to a proper governance, and of course a number of virtues. For if a ruler exhibits virtues, he becomes an example to his people, rather than a tyrant. If only some people would take the example to mind. If only some people would take the example to mind. Anyhow, it occurs to me that that a lot of people don't actually watch my stream when I'm doing this, so just to give a little context, when I repeated that louder and more sarcastically the second time, I did go over to look at lamp while I was doing that. So just to give some context to what's going on for you if you're not watching. Anyhow, but yeah, I think that's about all I have to say on book 2. It's going pretty quick. I mean, we'll see how we get on with it. I'm enjoying these so far. Yeah, pressing on. Book 3, concerning manners and morals. Confucius said at the head of the house of Qi, who had 8 rows of dancers performing in his temple, if he can bear to do this, what can he not bear to do? The master said, a man who is not virtuous, what has he to do with worship? A man who is not virtuous, what has he to do with the music of the temple? Lin Fang asked what were the chief principle in observances of ritual. The master answered, a great question indeed. In ceremonies in general, it is better to be simple than lavish. In the rites of mourning, heartfelt distress is better than observance of detail. The master said, a gentleman never contends in anything he does. except perhaps in archery. Even then he bows to his rival, and yields him the way as they ascend the pavilion. In like manner he descends and offers him the penalty cup. In his contentions he is still a gentleman. Zhu Xia asked, "What is the meaning of the passage?" And she artfully smiles, what dimples appear. A bewitching eyes show their colours so clear, ground spotless and candid, with tracery splendid. The painting comes after the groundwork, answered the master. Then manners are secondary, said Zhu Xia. "'Tis Shang, Zhu Xia, who unfolds my meaning," replied the master. "Now indeed I can begin to discuss the poets with him." He sacrificed to his forefathers as if they were present. He sacrificed to the gods as if the gods was present. The master said, "For me not to be present at a sacrifice is as if I did not sacrifice." The master said, "Shu had the advantage of surveying the two preceding dynasties. How full of its culture. I follow Shu dynasty ideas." When the master first entered the Grand Temple, he asked about everything, whereupon someone remarked, "Who says the son of man of Su knows the correct forms?" On entering the Grand Temple, he asked about everything. The master, hearing of it, remarked, "This too is correct form." The master said, "In archery, piercing the target is not essential, for men are not of equal strength. Such were the rule of yore." Zhu Kung wished to dispense with the large sheep presented in the ducal temple at the announcement of the new moon. The master said of Zhu, "You care for the sheep, I care for the ritual." The master said, "If one were to serve one's prince with perfect homage, people today would deem it sycophancy." When Duke Ting asked how a prince should employ his ministers, and how ministers should serve their prince, Confucius replied, saying, "A prince should employ his ministers with courtesy, a minister should serve his prince with loyalty." When Duke Ai asked Sai Wo concerning the altars to the tutelary deities of the land, Sai Wo responded, "The sovereign of Xia adopted the pine, the many in the cypress, but the men of Shu the Chu, the chestnut, intimating that the people should stand in dread." On the master hearing of this, he said, "When a deed is done, it is useless to discuss it. When a thing has taken its course, it is useless to remonstrate. What is past and gone is useless to blame." The master spoke of the Shao music as perfectly beautiful in form and perfectly good in its influence. He spoke of the Wu music as perfectly beautiful in form, but not perfectly good in its influence. The master said, "Our station filled without magnanimity, religious observance performed without reverence, and mourning conducted without grief. From what standpoint shall I view such ways?" And that's the end of book 3. Another drink and another consideration. Another odd theme that emerges. 2 passages on archery in the book on manners and morals. I mean, one of them you kind of see because it's only tangentially about archery. Not contending, accepting perhaps archery, and even then being magnanimous to one's opponent. That's pretty moral. But the other parable, let me double check the word because it was a good one. I don't want to mess it up. In archery, piercing the target is not essential, for men are not equal of strength. Such were the rule of yore. Again, I think that one's more metaphorical than it is literal, but I do like it. Success is not necessarily dependent upon impressive feats. In an archery competition, The thing measured is accuracy, not the ability to pierce through a target with the strength of your jaw. Even though the strength of a bowman, especially a war bowman, is important. It is moral not to judge a person on things that are not being judged at the moment, to judge them on their own virtues or the virtues being tested. That's a good one. I don't know, I'm sort of conflicted about this book, because I came into it expecting not to agree with a lot of it, because obviously filial piety and sort of agreement with or obedience to one's elders isn't exactly something that I'm known for, given the nature of the primary elder whom I'm in relation with. I'm not saying exactly filial creatures in the first place, but there's a lot of good stuff in here. I don't know that I agree with the broad points, but there are a lot of little things. The best sort of man is not a machine, for example. A few of these just really resonate. I guess it makes sense. This is a book that has lasted thousands of years. There's got to be good stuff in here, even if there are people who don't agree with it. I also think it's worth noting that my general thought of philosophy is that there are no correct philosophies, or rather that every philosophy is correct, but only in its own sense, right? Each philosophy isn't answering the one or giving a single be-all end-all answer. Each philosophy, if done well, as far as I'm aware, is essentially describing its own perfect world. A world that would work perfectly within its own sort of set of rules and morals, at least ideally. So even if you disagree with the sort of Confucian point of view, like I do, I think it's worth worth noting and able to be seen that if you were to stick with the principles of Confucianism and obey filial piety with the sort of reverence that Confucius holds with it, it would work. It would make for a world that works well. If those higher respected those lower, as those lower are meant to respect those higher. But of course, so seldom does that happen. I'll have another drink. Press on. Book 4, Concerning Virtue. Oh, fair enough. Now, before we begin virtue, I shall stretch. Thank you for that, Plague. Thank you for observing filial piety by making sure they take care of your elders. Oh. My poor old bones. Thanks. I needed that, probably. I do appreciate it. Pressing on. Book 4, Concerning Virtue. The Master said, "It is the moral character of a neighbourhood that constitutes its excellence, and how can they be considered wise who does not elect to dwell in moral surroundings?" The Master said, "A man without virtue cannot long abide in adversity, nor can he long abide in happiness, but the virtuous man is at rest in virtue, and the wise man covets it." The Master said, "Only the virtuous are competent to love or to hate men." The Master said, "He who has really set his mind on virtue will do no evil." The Master said, "Wealth and rank are what men desire, but unless they be obtained in the right way, they may not be possessed. Poverty and obscurity are what men detest, but unless prosperity be brought about in the right way, they are not to be abandoned. If a man of honour forsakes virtue, how is he to fulfil the obligations of his name? A man of honour never disregards virtue, even for the space of a single meal. In moments of haste he cleaves to it, in seasons of peril he cleaves to it." The Master said, "I have never seen one who loved virtue, nor one who hated what was not virtuous. He who loved virtue would esteem nothing above it, and who hated what is not virtuous would himself be so virtuous that he would allow nothing evil that would adhere to him. Is there anyone able for a single day to devote his strength to virtue? I have never seen such a one whose ability would be sufficient. If perchance there be such, I have never seen them. The master said, a man's faults all conform to his type of mind. Observe his faults, and you may know his virtues. The master said, he who heard the truth in the morning might die content in the evening. The master said, the student who aims at wisdom, and yet who is ashamed of shabby clothes or poor food, is not yet worthy to be discoursed with. Or discoursed with. The master said, the wise man in his attitude towards the world has neither predilections nor prejudices. He is on the side of what is right. The master said, the man of honour thinks of his character, the inferior man of his position. The man of honour desires justice, the inferior man favour. The master said, he who works for his own interests will arouse much animosity. The master said, if a prince able to rule his country with courtesy and deference, then what difficulty will he have? And if he cannot rule his country with courtesy and deference, what use are the forms of courtesy to him? The master said, one should not be concerned at lack of position, but should be concerned about what will fit him to occupy it. One should not be concerned at being unknown, but should seek to be worthy of being known. The master said, Shen, my teaching contains one all-pervading principle. Yes, replied Zheng Su. When the master had left the room, the disciples asked, what did he mean? Zheng Su replied, our master's teaching is simply this, conscientiousness within and consideration for others. Hey Nazca, yeah, it's going pretty good. We're just going through the Analects at the minute by Confucius. They're each sort of little bite-sized phrases, so there's nothing for you to catch up on this time, so I won't give a summary. But yeah, thank you for stopping by. I hope your day is going well as well. The master said, the wise man is informed in what is right. The inferior man is informed in what will pay. I like that one. That's a good one. The master said, when you see a man of worth, think how to rise to his level. When you see an unworthy man, then look within and examine yourself. The master said, in his duty to his parents, a son may gently remonstrate with them. If he sees that they are not inclined to yield, he should be increasingly respectful but not desist. And though they deal hardly with him, he must not complain. The master said, the age of one's parents should ever be kept in mind, as an occasion at once for joy and for fear. The master said, the men of old were reserved in speech and ashamed lest they should come short indeed. The master said, the self-restrained seldom out. The master said, the wise man desires to be slow to speak, but quick to act. The master said, virtue never dwells alone, it always has neighbours. And that's the end of book 4, concerning virtue. We have a drink and we do a little bit of think over. So what sticks out to me about this one, this book particularly is that it's sort of bookended by a couple of quotes that I think come together. It is the moral character of a neighbourhood that constitutes its excellence, and how can one he be considered wise who does not elect to dwell in moral surroundings? And then at the end, virtue never dwells alone, it always has neighbours. It's an interesting one, because I think it points to an important principle, that to be a just person you must surround yourself with just people. A company that you keep informs or says a lot about who you are as a person. There's another one that I think stands out too, which is the summary of the teachings. Our master's teaching is simply this: conscientiousness within and consideration for others. It's good. But yeah. I mean, the morals here are pretty solid. I mean, even the, the one that you can remonstrate with your parents, although you can't be mad at them when they get mad at you. You know, is a little asterisk to fill your piety that I think is a good addition and important to know. Get on with these, yeah. I think that's all I've got to say, so we'll press on. Book 5, concerning certain disciplines and others, or certain disciples and others. The master said of Kung Ye Chang that he were a suitable man to marry, for though he had been in prison, it were through no wrongdoing of his. So he gave him his own daughter to wife. The master said of Nan Yang, that when the country were well governed, he would not be set aside, and when the country were well governed, he would escape suffering and death. So he gave him his elder brother's daughter to wife. The master said of Zhu Xian, or Chiem, an honourable man indeed is a one such as he. With the state of Lu without men of honour, how could he have acquired this excellence? Someone remarked, a virtuous man is young, but he is not ready of speech. What need has he of ready speech? Said the master. The man who is always ready with his tongue to others will often be disliked by them. I do not know about his virtue, but what need has he got of ready speech? The master wanted to engage Shi Tao Kai in office, but he replied, I still lack confidence for this, whereat the master were pleased. The master said, my doctrines make no progress. I will get me on a raft and float away upon the sea. If anyone accompanies me, will it not be you? Zulu, you, on hearing this, were pleased. Whereupon the master said, you is fonder of daring than I. He also exercises no discretion. The master addressing Zhu Kang said, which is the superior, you or Hui? How dare I look at Hui? He answered. Hui hears one point and from it apprehends the old 10. I hear one point and apprehend a second therefrom. The master said, you are not equal to him. I grant you, you are not equal to him. Saw you spending the daytime in sleep, the master said, rotten wood is unfit for carving, and a wall of dirt unfit for plastering. As to you, what is the use of reproving him? Formerly, he continued, my attitude towards others was to hear what they said and give them credit for their deeds. Now my attitude towards others is to listen to what they say and note what they do. It's through you that I've made this change. The master said, I have never seen a man of strong character. Someone remarked, there is Shen Cheng. Cheng, said the master, he is under the influence of his passions, and how can he be possessed of strength of character? Zhu Kang said, what I do not wish others to do to me, that also I wish not to do to them. Zhu, observed the master, that is a point to which you have not attained. Zhu Kang said, our master's culture and refinement all may hear, but our master's discourse on the nature of man and the laws of heaven is not given to Waterware. When Zulu heard any precept and had not yet been able to put it into practice, he were only afraid lest he should hear some other. Zu Kung asked, "On what grounds has Kung Zu received his posthumous title of Wen?" "He were clever and fond of learning," replied the master, "and he were not ashamed to seek knowledge from his inferiors. That is why he has often been styled cultured." The master remarked to Zhu Shan that he had 4 of the ideal man's characteristics. In his personal conduct he was serious, in his duty to his superior he was deferential, in providing for the people he was beneficent, and in directing them he was just. The master said Yen Ping Chung were gifted in the art of friendship. Whatever the lapse of time, he maintained towards his friend the same consideration. The master said San Wen Chung kept a large tortoise in an edifice, on whose pillar tops were representations of hills, and on its king posts of water plants. Of what sort was his wisdom? Chai Wen Zhu used to think thrice before acting. The master, hearing of it, said twice would do. The master said, while good order prevailed in his state, Ning Wu Zhu were a wise man. When the state fell into disorder, he were a fool. His wisdom may be equalled, his folly cannot be equalled. Ah, well, Wild, good to have you. I appreciate the luck. We're just doing the Analects of Confucius, so it's a lot of little, like, 1 paragraph quotes, so you've not missed anything, right? But yeah, I appreciate you being there. Once, when Yin Wan and Zhu Lu were standing by him, the master said, "Suppose each of you tells me his wishes." "I should like," said Zhu Lu, "to have carriages and horses, and like furs to wear, so as to share them with my friends, nor would I feel any annoyance if they spoiled them." "I should like," said Yen Yuan, "ne'er to make a display of my good qualities, nor a parade of my merits." "Maybe we have the master's wishes?" asked Zhu Lu. "They would be," said the master, "to comfort the aged, be faithful to my friends, and cherish the young." The master said, "It is all in vain. I have never yet seen a man who could perceive his own faults, and bring the charge home against himself." The master said, "Even in an hamlet of 10 houses, there must be men as conscientious and sincere as myself, but none as fond of learning as I am." That's the end of book 5. Concerning certain disciples and others. I'll have a quick drink of water and we'll do our discussion. So this book is mostly just talking about the disciples of Confucius and giving some context and ideas of them, though of course reflecting on their various virtues. There's some good points there, but there's only one thing that really stands out to me. Let me see, where was it? Yeah, this is also one of the long ones, interestingly. The one that stands out to me is, the master said that Sang Wen Chung keeps a large tortoise in an edifice, on whose pillar tops were representations of hills, and on its king posts of water plants. Of what sort was his wisdom? Now that one stands out to me, because of all the little things we've read and all the little snippets, that is the one that I have completely not understood anything from. Like from most of these I'm getting some idea of, there's like hints of wisdom, or there's some idea of virtue, even if it's one that I don't necessarily agree with, or it seems a bit like basic. No idea what he's banging on about there. I guess maybe it could be something like a Khan where you're supposed to think about it. But I don't really know. It might also be one of those things where it's a cultural reference that I don't have the sort of cultural background for. Given that it is, this is a reference made in both in China, a culture in which I'm not incredibly versed, and also made 2,000 some years ago. But yeah, turtle on an edifice, representations of hills on top of its pillars, and water plants in its king posts. What is there? I mean, literally the only thing that's going to mind is sort of elemental symbolism there. Hills being of earth, tortoise obviously of water, but also the tortoise is a representation of earth and on the four sacred beasts, I think, and then water plants could be water and wood. No clue. That one's gone above my head. So if you've got any idea what it means, feel free to let me know. But otherwise, I think we press on. Our break's come up in not too very long, but since these are all short, we can sort of stop where we need to. So, yeah. Book 6, concerning certain disciples and other subjects. Remember I said this book wasn't written by Confucius, but was a collection of anecdotes told by his disciples? I guess they decided they wanted some time in the sunlight to Jukai asked which of the disciples were fond of learning. Confucius answered him, there was Yen Hui. He was fond of learning, he never visited his anger on another, and he never repeated a fault. Unfortunately his life was short, and he died. Now there is none like him, nor have I heard of one who is fond of learning. The master said, Hui, his heart for 3 months together ne'er departed from virtue. As to the others, and some day or in some month they reached it, but that were all. The master said, what a man of worth was Hui, a single bamboo bowl of millet, a single ladle of cabbage soup, living in a mean alley. Others could not have borne his distress, but Hui never abated his cheerfulness. What a worthy man was Hui. Jan Chu remarked, it is not that I have no pleasure in your teaching, sir, but I am not strong enough. He who is not strong enough, answered the master, gives up halfway, but you have drawn the line already. A master, speaking to Zhu, also to Zhu Xia, said, be you a scholar of the nobler type, not a scholar of the inferior man's type. The master said, who can go forth except by the door? Why will not men go by the way? The master said, when nature exceeds training, you have the rustic. When training exceeds nature, you have the clerk. It is only when nature and training are proportionately blended that you have the higher type of man. The master said, man is born for uprightness. Without it, he is lucky to escape with his life. The master said, he who knows the truth is not equal to him who loves it, and he who loves it is not equal to him who delights in it. The master said, to men above the average one may discourse on higher things, but to those who are below the average one may not discourse on higher things. Well, I guess, chat, that would make you all above the average. Congratulations. When Fan Shi asked what constituted wisdom, the master replied, to devote oneself earnestly to one's duty to humanity and, while respecting the spirits of the departed, to avoid them may be called wisdom. When he's asking about virtue, the master replied, a man of virtue puts duty first, however difficult, and makes what he will gain thereby an after consideration, and this may be called virtue. The master said, The clever delights in water, the virtuous in the hills. The clever are restless, the virtuous calm. The clever enjoy life, the virtuous prolong life. Is that an answer to the turtle riddle from before? The clever delights in water, the virtuous in the hills. The clever are restless, the virtuous calm. The clever enjoy life, the virtuous prolong life. Oh, ads are about to start, so we'll stop there for a minute. I wonder about that. I do. Clever enjoy water and the virtuous enjoy hills. The turtle and the water plants and the hills on top of the thing. The clever are restless, the virtuous calm. There's no restlessness there. The tortoise is certainly a calm animal. The clever enjoy life, the virtuous prolong it. The turtle is a long-lived animal. Can it be said though that there is water there really? I mean, water plants, certainly. So a little cleverness with much virtue, maybe? I don't know. That's a puzzler, that is. Let's have a swallow of water. Well, we have the opportunity. I'll be honest, I'm getting a lot more out of this than I expected to. Like, I know I'm talking about these great four philosophies, and I know a little bit about most of them. But I'll be perfectly honest, I have a strong preference for one of these already, although I try not to say what it is. But it wasn't Confucianism. I sort of expect to come into this either sort of finding some value in the text but disagreeing with most of it, or else sort of just having it be like a collection of, fairly trite, not deep, meaningful quotes. But instead I found a lot to be worth considering in these. Yeah, I'm getting a lot more out of them than I expected. You gotta go in with an open mind, I suppose. Still. It's funny, this was of the four of these, this wasn't the one I was looking forward to least. I think I'm not looking forward to the Book of Lord Shat, I'll admit that. But it was probably the second least after that. I'm looking forward to the Mosey and the Tad Dead Chick. I really am getting a lot out of it. Yeah. Gotta keep an open mind, I suppose. I think the turtle does still bother me. It really does. I might have to see if I can scare up some reference texts after this to go and read about it. Ooh. Oh damn! Congratulations on the 20th Street Wild. I don't know if you can hear me because we are still technically within the bounds of the outbreak, but if you can, I'm very much appreciative and solicitous of your good nature. Yeah. And now that the ads is official, I will say again, I'm very solicitous and appreciative of your long 20 streak. I appreciate it. Whoop. Fair enough. I'll hydrate. I'll keep good posture for the next book. Right. Okay. Yeah. Very nice one, Wild. But Abe, I must also say, very nice emotes there. Good choice. Okay, so I've had my hydrate. I never really know what to do with the check my posture thing, because I know that you can straighten up, but then my immediate goal is to lean back down towards the book. So what I will do is I'll keep my back straight for the end of this book and then for the next one, which I think is a fair compromise. So, yeah, thank you for the 20 streak. Actually, that's an interesting point, isn't it? It just occurred to me. The streak thing that Twitch does, well, obviously it's meant to encourage, repeat viewership and all this. But it is actually a very good way of encouraging diligence, isn't it? It's not like you have to be here for the whole thing or you have to give a bunch of money. But it rewards you for showing up. It is a demonstration of diligence. That's interesting, isn't it? I never considered that. Twitch promoting the fundamental virtues, though. No. I do appreciate your demonstration of it, Wild. 20 streak. Interesting. Now, I'm going to go over the last one we read again because I am obsessed with that a little bit. So, sitting up straight and reading straight forward. The master said, "The clear delight in water, the virtuous in the hills. The clever are restless, the virtuous calm. The clever endure laugh, the virtuous prolong laugh." Sir Woe asked, saying, "An altruist, even if someone said to him, 'There is a man in the well,' would, I suppose, go in after him?" "Why should he act like that?" answered the master. "The higher type of man might hasten to the well, but not precipitate himself into it. He might be imposed upon, but not utterly hoodwinked." Zhu Kung said, "Suppose there were one who conferred benefits far and wide upon the people, and who were able to succour the multitudes. What might one say of him? Could he be called a philanthropist?" "What has he to do with philanthropy?" said the master. "Must he not be a sage?" Even Yao and Shun felt the deficiency herein. The philanthropist is one who, desiring to maintain himself, sustains others, desiring to develop himself, develops others. To be able from one's own self to draw a parallel for the treatment of others, that may be called the rule of philanthropy. To be able from one's own self to draw a parallel for the treatment of others, that may be called the rule of philanthropy. I like that one. That's a good definition of it. To understand that by benefiting others, you benefit the self. That is a good definition of philanthropy. I like that. Yeah. There's not too much that I draw especially out of that book. I think it's another one that examples it, but again, I could go back over the total question days and days and the sort of water in the hills and that, but yeah. Overall a good one. And that last line especially stands out. It's good. I don't think I've got too much else to say, so pressing right on to book 7. Concerning the master herself. The master said, "The meditative treasuring up of knowledge, the unwearying pursuit of wisdom, the tireless instruction of others. Which of these is found in me?" The master said, "Neglecting the cultivation of character, lack of thoroughness in study, incompetency to move towards recognised duty, inability to correct any imperfections. These are what cause me solicitude. In his leisure hours, the master relaxed his manner and wore a cheerful countenance. The master said, "How utterly fallen off I am. For long I have not dreamed as of yore that I saw Duke Wen of Shu." The master said, "Fix your mind on the right way, hold fast to it in your moral character, follow it up in kindness to others, take your recreation in the polite arts." The master said, "I expound nothing to him who is not earnest, nor help out anyone not anxious to express himself. When I have demonstrated one angle, and he cannot bring me back to the other 3, then I do not repeat my lesson." When the master dined by the side of a mourner, he never ate with a fool. On the same day that he had been mourning, he ne'er sang. The master, addressing Yen Yuan, said, "To accept office when required, and to dwell in retirement when set aside, only you and I have this spirit." "But suppose," said Zulu, "that the master had the conduct of the armies of a great state, whom would he associate with him?" The man, replied the master, who bare-armed would beard a tiger or rush a river, dying without regret. Him I would not have with me. If I must have a colleague, he should be one who on the verge of an encounter would be apprehensive, and who loved strategy and its successful issue. The master said, if wealth were a thing one could count on finding, even though it meant my becoming a whip-holding groom, I would do it. As one cannot count on finding it, I will follow the quests that I love better. The subjects which the master treated with great solicitude were fasting, war, and disease. When the master was in Chi'i, he heard the Shao music, and for the 3 months were unconscious of the taste of meat. I did not imagine, said he, that music had reached such perfection as this. The master said, with coarse food to eat, water for drink, and a bent arm for a plough or for a pillow, even in such a state, I could be happy. For wealth and honour obtained unworthily are to me a fleeting cloud. The master said, given a few more years of life to finish my study with the Book of Changes, and I may be free from great errors. The subjects on which the master most frequently discoursed were the odes, the history, and the observance of the rites. On all these he constantly dwelt. The Duke of Shay asked Zulu what he thought about Confucius, but Zulu returned him no answer. Why did you not say? Said the master. He is simply a man so eager for improvement that he forgets his food, so happy therein that he forgets his sorrow, and so does not observe that old age is at hand. The master said, I am not one who has intimate knowledge, but one who, loving antiquity, is diligent in seeking therein. The master would not discuss prodigies, prowess, lawlessness, or the supernatural. The master said, when walking in a party of 3, my teachers is always present. I can select the good qualities of the one and copy them, and the unsatisfactory qualities of the other and correct them in myself. The master took 4 subjects for his teaching: culture, conduct, conscientiousness, and good faith. The master said, it is not mine to see an inspired man. Could I behold a noble man, I would be content. The master said, it is not mine to see a really good man. Could I see a man of consistent purpose, I would be content. Affecting to have when they have not, empty yet affecting to be full, in straits yet affecting to be prosperous, how hard it is for such men to have constancy of purpose. The master fished with a line, but not with a net. When shooting he did not aim at a resting bird. The master said, there are men properly who do things correctly without knowing the reason why, but I am not like that. I hear much, select the good and follow it. I see much and treasure it up. This is the next best thing to philosophical knowledge. The master said, is virtue indeed far off? I crave for virtue, and lo, virtue is at hand. The master said, in literature perhaps I may compare with others, but as to my living a noble life, to that I have not yet attained. The master said, as to being a sage or a man of virtue, how dare I presume at such a claim? But as to striving thereafter unweariedly, and teaching others therein without flagging, that can be said of me, and that is all. And that, said Kung Sai Hua, is just what we disciples cannot learn. The master said, men, if prodigal, are uncontrolled, if frugal, then narrow, but better be narrow than uncontrolled. The master said, the noble man is calm and serene, the inferior man is continually worried and anxious. The master were affable yet dignified, commanding yet not overbearing, courteous yet easy. That's the end of book 7 on the Master. An interesting account of a life. In some ways he strikes me as a very humble man, yet in others he's a little bit perhaps arrogant. Especially in the way that once his disciple refused to describe him, he styled himself a bit. Yeah. I don't actually have too much to say about that otherwise, I don't think, so I'll swallow water and we'll press on. Now that I can go back to having rubbish posture. So, book 8. The Master said, Tarpo may be described as possessing a character of the book 8, chiefly concerning certain ancient worthies. The Master said, Tarpo may be described as possessing a character of the noblest. He resolutely renounced the imperial throne, leaving people no ground for appreciating his conduct. The Master said, courtesy uncontrolled by the laws of good taste become laboured effort. Caution uncontrolled becomes timidity. Boldness uncontrolled becomes recklessness. And frankness uncontrolled becomes effrontery. When the highly placed pay generous regard to their own families, the people are equally stirred to kindness. When they do not discard old dependents, neither will the people deal meanly with theirs. During Seng Zhu's illness, Meng Qingzhu called to make inquiries. Seng Zhu spoke to him, saying, when a bird is dying, its song is sad. When a man is dying, what he says is worth listening to. The 3 rules of conduct upon which a man of our rank should place value are, in his bearing to avoid rudeness and reminiscence, in order in his looks to aim at sincerity, in tone of his conversation to keep aloof from vulgarity and impropriety. As to the details of temple vessels, there are proper officers for looking after them. Seng Zhu said, talented yet seeking knowledge from the untalented, of many attainments yet seeking knowledge from those with few, having, as though he had not, full yet bearing himself as if empty, offended against yet not retaliating. Once upon a time I had a friend who lived after this manner. Seng Zhu said, the scholar must not be without capacity and fortitude, for his load is heavy and the road is long. He takes virtue for his load, and is not that heavy. Only with death does his course end, and is not that long. The Master said, let the character be formed by the poets, established by the laws of right behaviour, and perfected by music. The Master said, the people may be made to follow a course, but not to understand the reason why. The Master said, love of daring and resentment of poverty drive men to desperate deeds, and men who lack moral character, if resentment of them be carried too far, will be driven to similar deeds. The Master said, if a man has gifts as admirable as those of Duke Chu, King Wen, yet be vain and mean in his other gifts, are unworthy of notice. Yet be vain and mean, his other gifts are unworthy of notice. The Master said, it is not easy to find a man who has studied for 3 years without aiming at pay. The Master said, the man of unwavering sincerity and love and moral discipline will keep with the deaf his excellent principles. He will not enter a tottering state, nor dwell in a rebellious one. When law and order prevail in the empire, he is in evidence. When it is without law and order, he withdraws. When law and order prevail in his state, he is ashamed to be needy and of no account. When law and order fail, he is ashamed to be in affluence and honour. The Master said, he who does not occupy the office does not discuss its policy. The Master said, with the repulsive yet evasive, the simple yet dishonest, the stupid yet untruthful. I hold no acquaintance. The master said, learn as if you were not reaching your goal, and as though you were afraid of missing it. The master said, how sublime the way Shun and Yu undertook the empire, and yet as if it were nothing there. The master said, in you I could find no room for criticism. Simple in his own food and drink, he were unsparing in his filial offerings to the spirits. Shabby in his workaday clothes, he was most scrupulous to the elegance of his kneeling apron and sacrificial crown. Humble was the character of his palace, he spent his strength in the draining and ditching of the country. In you, I find no room for criticism. That's the end of Book 8, chiefly concerning certain ancient worthiness. Ancient worthiness, I should say. I'll pause to have a quick swallow of water. There's nothing too much about any one of these passages I want to say. Well, I do think it is worth mentioning and sort of examining the idea here that in his examination of these ancient people, what Confucius is doing is setting up and establishing virtues as their baseline of value by establishing that they were held by great figures. It's sort of an inverted way of reaching virtuous ideas, of justifying the virtues prized, which I think is interesting, and in some ways lines up with the ideas of filial piety and piety of the ancestors. Anyhow, pressing on. That's odd. This book has been a bit weird in the reading of it, because each individual book that it's broken down into feels very short. And it feels like I've been going for quite a long time. It's only been an hour and 20. And we're not even quite halfway through it yet. I sort of want to push on and do the whole thing tonight. I don't have anywhere to be. I don't know. Oh, is that limited to a one per stream thing? I don't know why that is. I think that's meant to have a timer associated with it, but the wrong box might have been checked. If you're unable to do it again, then that is my failing, and I shall atone for that sin. But yeah, I will double check now. So, oh, not only is that a once per person per stream, that's just a once per stream total. That absolutely shouldn't be that. Well, I don't know why that is the case, and I shall endeavour to fix that between streams. But for now, I shall take upon the error myself and shall stretch on my own recognizance. Oh. Yeah. Sorry about that error. I don't know if you've noticed, but whenever I come up with an idea for a redeem, I just throw it on and then don't remove any of them, even if they don't really fit anymore. So a lot of these are just untested. So yeah. So I apologise for the I don't even know, the technical error. I don't know. Yeah, consider myself stretched again. What are we doing? Let's press on, shall we? Book 9, chiefly personal. The master seldom spoke on profit, on the ordering of providence and on perfection. The master were entirely free from four things. He had no preconceptions, no predeterminations, no obduracy, and no egoism. When the master were in jeopardy, in Kwang, he said, since King Wen is no longer alive, does not the mantle of enlightenment, Wen, rest here on me? If ever we're going to destroy this enlightenment, a mortal like me would not have attained such a connection with him. Since heaven is not ready to destroy this enlightenment, what can the men of Kwang do to me? The great minister inquired of Zhu Kang, saying, "Your master, he is surely inspired. What varied acquirements he has?" Zhu Kang answered, "Of a truth, heaven has lavishly endowed him to the point of inspiration, and his acquirements are also many." When the master heard of it, he said, "Does the minister really know me? In my youth I were in humble circumstances, and for that reason gained a variety of acquirements. In common matters, but does nobleness of character depend on variety? It does not depend on variety." Lao said, "The master used to say, I have not been occupied in official life, and so I've had the time to become acquainted with the arts." The master said, "Am I indeed a man with innate knowledge? I have no such knowledge. But when an uncultivated person, in all simplicity, comes to me with a question, I thrash out its pros and cons until I fathom it." Yen Yuan heaved a deep sigh and said, "The more I look up at it, the higher it rises. The more I probe it, the more impenetrable it becomes. I catch a glimpse of it in front of me, and it is instantly beyond. But our master, step by step, skillfully lures men on it. He has broadened me by culture and restrained me by reverence. If I wished to stop, I could not, and when at times I have exhausted all of my powers, something seems to stand majestically before me. And though I seek to pursue my path towards it, I find never a way." Zhu Kang asked, "If I had a lovely jewel here, should I shut it up in a casket and keep it, or seek a good price and sell it?" "By all means, sell it," answered the master. "But I myself will wait for a good offer." The master proposed to go and dwell among the 9 uncivilized tribes of the East, whereupon someone remarked, "But they are so uncivilized, how can you do that?" The master responded, "Were a man of noble character to dwell among them, what lack of civilization would there be?" The master said, "It were only after my return from Wei of the Lu that music were revised, and that the secular and sacred pieces were properly differentiated." The master said, "In public life to do my duty to my prince or minister, in private life to do my duty to my fathers and brethren. In my duties to the departed, ne'er daring to be otherwise than diligent, and ne'er to be overcome with wine. In which of these am I successful?" Once when the master was standing by a stream, he observed, "All is transient like this, unceasing day and night." The master said, "I have never yet seen a man whose love of virtue equalled his love of woman." The master said, "Suppose I am raising a mound and, while it is still unfinished by a basketful, I stop short. It is I that stops short. Or suppose I begin on the level ground, although I throw down but one basketful and continue to do so. Then it is I that make progress." The master said, "Ah, we were the one whom I could tell things, and who ne'er failed to attend to them." The master, referring to Yen Yuan, said, "Alas, I e'er saw him make progress, and ne'er saw him stand still." The master said, "There are blades that spring up and ne'er flower, and there are others that flower but ne'er fruit." The master said, "Can anyone refuse assent to words of just admonition? It is amendment that is of value. Can anyone be otherwise than pleased with advice persuasively offered? It is the application of that is of value. Mere interest without application, mere assent without amendment. I can do nothing whatever with men of such calibre." The master said, "Make conscientiousness and sincerity your leading principles. Have no friends inferior to yourself, and when in the wrong, do not hesitate to amend." master said, "You may rob a free corpse army of its commander-in-chief, but you cannot rob even a common man of his will." The master said, "Wearing a shabby, hemp-quilted robe and standing by others dressed in fox and badger, yet no way abashed. You, Zulu, would be the one for that, eh? I'm friendly to none, and courting none. What does he that is not excellent?" As Zulu afterwards were perpetually intoning this, the master observed, "How can those 2 points alone be sufficient for excellence?" The master said, "Only when the year grows cold do we realise that the pine and the cypress are the last to fade." The master said, "The enlightened are free from doubt, the virtuous from anxiety, and the brave from fear." The master said, "There are some with whom one can associate in study, but who are not yet able to make common advance towards the truth. There are others who can make common advance towards truth, but who are not yet able to take with you a like firm stand. And there are others with whom you can take such a firm stand, but with whom you cannot associate in judgment." And that's the end of book 9, chiefly personal. I'll pause here to have a quick drink and then do a little bit of discussion, because there's an idea I've found I think you'll have from that. It's interesting, because this one says chiefly personal, and so seems to concern itself with the personal life and affectations of Confucius rather than any particular singular aspect of his philosophy. There's a single theme that I do find running through this, which might be said, I suppose, to be his personal philosophy in that case. And I think it's best summed up in this one paragraph. "Suppose I am raising a mound, and while it is still unfinished, by a basketful I stop short. It is I that stops short. Or suppose I begin on the level ground, although I throw down but one basketful and continue to do so, then it is I that make progress." It's interesting. And again, when he was standing beside a stream, he observed all is transient like this, unceasing day and night. The idea there that I find from this book is the idea of progress. The idea that even if one is making slow progress or seeming to do little, as long as one is progressing, one is active, one is in control. If you stop the mound one basket short, even if the rest of the mound is built, you are still making less progress than the man who on level ground continues to pile one basket at a time. That's an interesting one. I like that. I'm going to finish this book tonight. I'm going to do it in one sitting. I've decided now. I'm probably going to have to break into the lozenges at some point, but I'll do that during the next ad break, I think. But yeah. I'm going to get through this entire book, the entirety of the Analects, in one sitting, I've decided. I like these. There's something to them. Which I think is perhaps a very obvious thing to say of a 2,000-year-old book of wisdom that has been held as one of the central philosophies of a giant nation that has lasted 5,000 years. But you know, sometimes it's important to state the obvious. Anyhow, Book 10, Concerning the Sage in his Daily Life. Confucius, in his native village, bore himself with simplicity, as if he had no gifts of speech, but when in the temple or at court he expressed himself readily and clearly, yet with a measure of reserve. At court, when conversing with ministers of his own rank, he spoke out boldly. When conversing with the iron ministers, he spoke respectfully. But when the prince were present, his movements were nervous, though self-possessed. When the prince summoned him to receive a visitor, his expression seemed to change, and his knees as it were bent under him. As he saluted those who stood with him, on the right hand or the left as occasion required, his robe in front and behind hung straight and undisturbed, and as he hastened forward, it were as if with outstretched wings. When the visitor had departed, he always reported, saying, "The guest is no longer looking back at us." On entering the palace gate, he appeared to stoop, as though the gate were not high enough to admit him. He now stood in the middle of the gateway, nor in going through it did he step on the sill. As he passed the throne, he wore a constrained expression. His knees appeared to bend, and words seemed to fail him. As he ascended the audience hall, holding up his skirt, he appeared to stoop, and he held his breath as if he dare not breathe. On coming forth from his audience, after descending the first step, his expression relaxed to one of relief. As the bottom of the steps, he hastened forward, as with outreached wings, and on regaining his place, he maintained an attitude of nervous respect. He carried the ducal mace with bent back, as if unequal to its weight, neither higher than when making a bow, nor lower than when offering a gift. His expression, too, was perturbed and anxious, and he dragged his feet as if something were trailing behind. While offering the presents with which he was commissioned, he wore an easy look. In the subsequent private audience, he bore himself with amiability. He did not wear facings of purple or mauve, nor even in undress did he use red or crimson. In the hot weather, he wore an unlined gown of fine or loose woven material, always outside and over another. With a black robe, he wore black lambskin, with a light robe form. With a yellow robe for his undress, fur gown were long. With a yellow robed fox. His undress fur gown were long, with the right sleeve cut short. He always had his sleeping garment made half as long again as his body. He had thick fox or badger for own wear. When out of mourning, he omitted none of the usual ornaments. The skirts, all save his court skirt, he always shaped towards the waist. He did not pay visits of condolence in dark lamb's fur or a dark hat. At the new moon, he always put on his court robes and presented himself at court. When fasting, he always wore a spotless sweet suit of linen cloth. When fasting too, he always altered his diet, and in his dwelling always changed his seat. He had no objection to his rice being of the finest, nor to having his meat finely minced. Rice affected by the weather, or turned, he would not eat, nor fish that were unsound, nor flesh that were tainted. Neither would he eat anything discoloured, nor that smelt, nor that were under or overcooked, or not in season. He would not eat anything improperly cut, nor anything served without proper seasoning. However much meat there might be, he did not allow what he took to exceed the flavour of the rice. Only in wine he had no set limit, short of mental confusion. Bought wine or dried meat from the market, he would not eat it. He was never without ginger at his meals, but he was not a great eater. After the sacrifices in the ducal temple, he never kept his share of the flesh overnight, nor the flesh of his ancestral sacrifices more than 3 days, lest after 3 days it might not be eaten. He did not converse while eating, nor talk while in bed. As food were only coarse rice and vegetable broth, he invariably offered a little in sacrifice, and always with solemnity. He would not sit on his mat unless it was straight. I'm just going to pause here. He would not sit on his mat unless it was straight. Now, I'm not saying that Confucius, ancient philosopher and father of wisdom to millions of people, was autistic. But he would not sit on his mat unless it was straight. Anyway, when his fellow villagers had I stand by that point. When his fellow villagers had a feast, he only left after the elders had departed. When his fellow villagers held a procession to expel the pestilent influences, he put on his court robes and stood on the eastern steps. When sending complimentary inquiries to anyone in another state, he bowed twice as he escorted his messengers forth. On Kangzu sending him a present of medicine, he bowed and accepted it, but said, "As I am not well acquainted with it, I do not dare to taste it." When the prince sent him a present of food, he always adjusted his mat and first tasted it himself. If the prince's present were fresh meat, he always had it cooked and set it before his ancestors. With the prince's present living, he always kept it alive. When in attendance on the prince at state dinner, while the prince sacrificed, he acted the subordinate part, the first tasting the dishes. When he were ill and the prince come to see him, he had his head laid to the east, and his court robes thrown over him, with his sash drawn across. When his prince commanded his presence, he did not wait while his carriage was being yoked, but started on foot. On entering the imperial ancestral temple, he asked about every detail. When a friend died with no one to see the rites, he would say, "I will see to his funeral." On receiving a present for a friend, unless it were a sacrificial flesh, he never made obeisance, not even if it were a carriage and horse. In bed he did not lie like a corpse. At home he wore no formal wear. Whenever he saw anyone in mourning, even though it were an intimate acquaintance, his expression always changed. And when he saw anyone in a cap of state, or a blind man, even though not in public, he always showed respect. On meeting anyone in deep mourning, he would bow to the crossbar of his carriage, as he did also to anyone carrying the census boards. When entertained at rich repast, he always expressed his appreciation with an altered look, and by standing up on a sudden clap of thunder, or a violent storm of wind, his countenance always changed. His appreciation with an altered look and by standing up, on a sudden clap of thunder or a violent storm of wind, his countenance always changed. When mounting his carriage, he always stood correctly, holding the mountain cord in his hand. In the carriage, he did not look behind, nor speak hastily, nor point with his hands. And that's the end of Book 10, concerning the sage in his daily life. Now that's halfway through the book, so we're slightly less than halfway through the page count of this, so we're probably looking at about the same again in terms of length of stream for those of you who are interested. So yeah, some of the observations then on the nature of Confucius as an individual. Now obviously there's a joke that I've made there about him being autistic, which I mean obviously there's not enough evidence for that, but he's particular about his eating habits and fastidious about the shape of his, or the straightness of his mouth, which does imply, if not some level of perhaps neurodivergent, then certainly fastidiousness and concern with that sort of thing. But yeah, interesting. I also think it's interesting the degree to which it mentions funerary rites and offerings, the concern given to the proper usage of sacrificial flesh. It's interesting. It also mentions his being fastidious about his food, although it takes time to mention that he wouldn't eat anything that was even slightly spoiled, which maybe just seems like good sense nowadays, but I guess 2,000 years ago would have been quite a picky thing to do. So yeah. Interesting. I don't know that it's hugely relevant in many accounts. I'm sure that there's some significance to the manner and style of his dress that I'm not catching as well, especially the court robes. And the fact that he considers he acts as though the weight of authority given to the prince is of physical weight, which I think is interesting. Almost psychosomatic. He definitely holds more interest in it than his average, I'll say that much. But yeah, that's about all I have to say on the matter, so pressing forward. Book 11, chiefly concerning the disciples. The master observed, in the arts of civilization, our forerunners are esteemed uncultivated, but in those arts their successors are looked upon as cultured, gentlemen. When I have need of those arts, I follow our forerunners. The master said of all who were with me in Shen and Chai, not one now comes to my door. Note of the moral character there were Yen Yuan, Min Zhu, Qian Jian Yu, and Chun Kun. The gift of speech, Sa Wa, and Zhu Kan. For administrative ability, Jian Yu and Shai Lu, Zhu Lu. And for literature and learning, Zhu Yu and Zhu Xiai, Sai. Hsia? Hsia. Hsia. HSIA is how it's spelled, I'm not sure exactly the pronunciation. The master said, "We were not one who gave me any assistance. You were invariably satisfied with whatever I said." The master said, "What a filial son Min Zu Chien has been. No one takes exception to what his parents and brothers have said of him." When Yu Yan died, the master said, "Alas, heaven has bereft me. Heaven has bereft me." When Yen Yuan died, the master bewailed him with exceeding grief, whereupon his followers said to him, "Sir, you are carrying your grief to excess." "Have I gone to excess?" asked he. "But if I may not grieve exceedingly over this man, for whom I shall grieve? For whom shall I grieve?" When Yin Hui, Yen Yuan, died, the other disciples proposed to give him an imposing funeral, which the master said, "It will not do." Nevertheless, they buried him with pomp. "Hui," said the master, "you regard me as a father, while I am not permitted to regard you as my son. But it is not I who do this, it is these disciples." When Shi Lu asked about his duty to the spirits, the master replied, "While still unable to do your duty to the living, how can you do your duty to the dead?" When he ventured to ask about death, Confucius answered, "Not yet understanding life, how can you understand death?" Once when Min Zu was standing by the master's side, he looked so self-reliant, Zhu Lu so full of energy, and Jian Yu and Zhu Kung so frank and fearless that the master were highly gratified. "But," said he, "a man like you will not come to a natural death." When the men of Lu were for rebuilding the Long Treasury, Min Zu Chien observed, "How would it do to restore it as before? Why need it be reconstructed?" The master said, "This man seldom speaks, but when he does, he is sure to hit the mark." Zhu Kung asked which were the better, Shi or Shang. The master replied, "Shi exceeds, Shang comes short." "So then," queried he, "Shi surpasses Shang, eh?" "To go beyond the mark," replied the master, "is as bad as to come short of it." Chai was simple-minded, Shen dull, Shi shallow, Yuan refined. The master said, "Hui, he was almost perfect, yet he were often in want. Zhu were not content with his lot, and yet his goods increased abundantly. Nevertheless, in his judgments, he often hit the mark." When Zhu Chang asked what characterized the way of the man of natural goodness, the master replied, "He does not tread the beaten track, nor yet does he enter into the inner sanctum of philosophy." The master said, "That a man's address may be solid and reliable, this only one may grant. It doesn't follow that he is a man of the higher type, or is his seriousness only an appearance." When Zulu asked whether he should put what he heard into immediate practice, the master answered, "You have parents and elders still living. Why should you at once put all you hear into practice?" When Jian Yu asked whether he should put what he heard into immediate practice, the master answered, "Put what you hear at once into practice." Kang Sa Hua asked, when you asked if he should put the precepts he heard into immediate practice, you, sir, replied, "Do you have parents and elders alive?" When Chiu asked if he should put the precepts he heard into immediate practice, you, sir, replied, "Put what you hear at once into practice." As I am perplexed about your meaning, I venture to ask a solution. Chiu, answered the master, lagged behind, so I urged him forward. But Yu has energy for 2 men, so I held him back. That's a good one. When the master was put in peril in Guang, Ye Hui fell behind. On the master saying to him, "I thought you were dead," he replied, "While you, sir, live, how should I dare to die?" When Qi Zhujian asked if Cheng Yu and Jian Qiu could be called great ministers, the master replied, "I thought, sir, you were going to ask about something extraordinary, and it's only a question about you and Qiu. He who may be called a great minister is one who serves his prince according to the right, and when that cannot be, resigns. Now as for you and you, they may be styled ordinary ministers. So then, said Zhu Jian, they will follow their chief, eh? A parricide or regicide, answered the master, they would assuredly not follow, however. When Zulu obtained the appointment of Zhu Cao as governor of Pi, the master said, "You are doing an ill turn to another man's son." "He will have his people and officers," replied Zulu. "He will also have the altars of the land and the grain. Why must he read books before he is considered educated?" "It is because of this kind of talk," said the master, "that I hate glib people." And that's the end of Book 11, chiefly concerning the disciples. And again, there's one passage here that stands out to me. Most of these is good, but I think the one that summarises it is it's one of the longer ones, so I don't review the whole thing. But Chu, answered the master, lags behind, so I urged him forward. But Yu has energy for 2 men, so I held him back. The idea that there are different approaches needed for different people who can in both cases be virtuous, is notable, I think. The same with the discussion of that it is equally bad to overshoot as to fall behind, or to fall short, I should say. It's interesting. There's not any real firm principle I draw for this book, but the idea that there are nuances that are abundant, I think, is a good thing to have made clear in this text. I'll give it points for that. And then I'll have a drink of water and press on. And with that chapter, we are now more than halfway through the page count as well, so just for those of you who are worried about the length. Book 12, concerning virtue, nobility, and polity. When Yen Yuan asked the meaning of virtue, the master replied, "Virtue is the denial of self in response to what is right and proper. Deny yourself for one day and respond to the right and proper, and everybody will accord you virtuous. For has virtue its source in oneself, or is it forsooth derived from others?" "May I beg for the main features?" asked Yen Yuan. The master answered, "When wrong and improper, do not look. When wrong and improper, do not listen. When wrong and improper, do not speak. When wrong and improper, do not move." "Though I am not clever," said Yen Yuan, "permit me to carry out these precepts. Is that the origin of hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil? I don't know. Seems so. Anyway, when Chung Kung asked the meaning of virtue, the master said, "When abroad, behave as if interviewing an honoured guest. In directing the people, act as if officiating at a great sacrifice. Do not do to others what you would not like yourself. Then your public laugh will arouse no ill will, nor your private laugh any resentment." "Though I am not clever," replied Chung Kung, "permit me to carry out these precepts." When Su Ma Niu asked for the definition of virtue, the master said, "The man of virtue is chary of speech." "Is chary of speech? Is this the meaning of virtue?" demanded Niu. "When the doing of it is difficult," responded Confucius, "can one be other than chary of talking about it?" I don't know what is meant here by the word chary, C-H-A-R-Y. I'm assuming it's careful or cautious, maybe, but I'm not familiar with that term, so. And Su Man Yu asked for a definition of the man of noble mind. The master said, "The man of noble mind has neither anxiety nor fear." "Neither anxiety nor fear," he rejoined. "Is this the definition of a noble man?" On searching with him, replied the master, he finds no chronic ill, so why should he be anxious, or why should he be afraid? Once, when Su Man Yu sorrowfully remarked, "Other men all have their brothers, I alone am without," Zhu Xia responded, "I've heard it said that death and life are divine dispensations, and wealth and honours are with heaven. When the man of noble mind unfailingly conducts himself with self-respect, is courteous and well behaved with others, then all within the 4 seas are his brothers. How then can a fine man grieve that he is without a brother? When Zhu Chang asked what it was meant by insight, the master replied, "He is unmoved by the insidious soaking of slander, or by urgent representations or direct personal injury, may be truly be called a man of insight. Indeed, he who is unmoved by the insidious soaking in a slander or by urgent representations or direct personal injury, may also indeed be called far-sighted." When Zhu Kang asked what the essentials of government, the master replied, "Sufficient food, sufficient forces, and the confidence of the people." "Suppose," rejoined Zhu Kang, "I were compelled to dispense with one. Which of those 3 should I forego first?" "Forego the forces," was the reply. "Suppose," said Zhu Kang, "I were compelled to eliminate another. Which of the other 2 should I forego?" "The food," was the reply. "For from of old death has been the lot of old men, but people without faith cannot stand." That's interesting. Almost puts me in mind of the bread and circuses then, although a somewhat less cynical take on it. Shi Zhu Cheng remarked, "For a man of our character to be natural is quite sufficient. What need is there of art to make him such?" "Alas," said Zhu Kang, "Your Excellency's words are those of a noble man, but a team of 4 horses cannot overtake the tongue. Art, as it were, is nature, as nature, so to speak, is art. The airless eye of a tiger or a leopard is about the same as the eye of a dog or a sheep." When Zhu Cheng asked the best way to improve his character and to discriminate in what were irrational, the master said, "Take conscientiousness and sincerity as your ruling principles. Submit also your mind to right conditions, and your character will improve. When you love a man, you might want him to live. When you hate him, you wish he were dead. But you've already wanted him to live, and yet again you wish he were dead. This is an instance of the irrational, nor indeed because of wealth, but solely because he is talented. But solely because talented. Those last 2 lines, not indeed because of wealth, but solely because talented, are in a second set of quotation marks. Which again is something I don't understand the significance of. When Duke Qing of Qi inquired of Confucius the principles of government, Confucius answered, saying, "Let the prince be prince, the minister minister, the father father, and the son son." "Excellent," said the Duke. "Truly, if the prince be not prince, the minister not minister, the father not father, and the son not son, however much grain I may have, shall I be allowed to eat it?" The master said, "You was a fellow. You could decide a dispute with half a word. Zulu, you never slept over a promise." The master said, "I can try a lawsuit as well as other men, but surely the great thing is to bring about that there be no go in the law." When Zhu Chang asked about the art of government, the master replied, "Ponder untiringly over your plans, and then conscientiously carry them into execution." The master said, "The man of noble mind seeks to achieve the good in others, and not their evil. The little-minded man is the reverse of this." When Shi Kang Zhu asked Confucius for a definition of government, Confucius replied, "To govern means to guard aright. If you, sir, will lead the way aright, who will dare to deviate from the right?" Shi Kang Zhu, being plagued with robbers, consulted Confucius, who answered him, saying, "If you, sir, be free from the love of wealth, although you pay people, they will not steal." Shi Kang Zhu asked the opinion of Confucius on government and said, How would it do to execute the lawless for the good or the law-abiding?" "What need, sir, is there a capital punishment in your administration?" responded Confucius. "If your aspirations are for good, sir, the people will be good. The moral character of those in our positions is the breeze. The character of those below is the grass. When the grass has the breeze upon it, it assuredly bends. Zhu Chang asked what a man must be like in order to gain general estimation. What is it that you mean by general estimation? Inquired the master. To ensure popularity abroad and to ensure it at home, replied Zhu Chang. That, said the master, is popularity, not esteem. As to the man who meets with general esteem, he is natural, upright, and a lover of justice. He weighs what men say and observes their expression, and his anxiety is to be more lowly than others. I've got to stop now because the ad's about to start. That was badly done. That was halfway through a paragraph. I judge poorly how quickly I get it done. Well, we'll start at the start of that one again, I guess. But right, now that the edge is on, I am, as I said, going to indulge in a lozenge. Something I haven't done on stream for a very long time. Now, this is something that Lamp started permitting me during my, I think it was during the Londonathon. He started allowing me throat lozenges to help me read for longer periods, and I get one of them for every hour of reading I do. Mostly these days, because I've been doing shorter streams that are less intensive on the throat, I've been saving them and having them between streams to help ease my throat and sort of help it heal properly. But since we're going for a long one today and I feel a bit of a tickle, I'm going to indulge in one while we're streaming to help soothe it as we go. I'll also have my drink of water. Ah, Lord. And that lozenge is immediately so much better. I normally have one of these before stream, and they're like nothing else for the throat. I know everyone talks about, honey as being the thing, and honey's good for the throat, but what these is they're ginseng lozenges. I just picked, Lamp just gave them to me out of a sort of whim. I don't know why, but they are like nothing else for the throat. They are a balm that is immediate. Like, I was feeling a little bit of rasping at the top of my throat, which generally I know pretty hard to soothe, and even with honey or other lozenges, I can feel a struggle. But Lord, immediately, like 10 seconds into a little bit of this, and it's immediately almost soothed the point I'm not noticeable. Cannot recommend them enough. Genuinely incredible. But yeah. As to the Analects, a little more general commentary. It's interesting that they not only are they referring to the words of Confucius as we go through, but they're also referring to his actions in life, which I think is good. It's important to judge a person by their actions as well as their words. Although, of course, we have only the words of his disciples who are very fond of it to his actual actions. Still, there's a lot to be said of it. It's a very thoughtful book, which maybe is again a bit redundant to say about philosophy, but I'm getting a lot from it. I only wish I hadn't messed up and sort of cut halfway through a paragraph there. I always feel bad when I do that. But anyway, ad breaks are about the wind, so I'll have a swallow of water and we'll get back to it. Right, okay. Ads is over, jumping right back into things. I'm going to start again from the beginning there, because I cut them off. Zhu Chang asked what a man must be like in order to gain general estimation. What is it that you mean by general estimation? Inquired the master. To ensure popularity abroad and to ensure it at home, replied Zhu Chang. That, said the master, is popularity, not esteem. As for the man who meets with general esteem, he is natural, upright, and a lover of justice. He weighs what men say and observes their expression, and his anxiety is to be more lowly than others. And so he assures esteem abroad, as he ensures it also at home. And with the seeker of popularity, he assumes an air of magnanimity, which his actions belie, while his self-assurance knows never a misgiving, and so he ensures popularity abroad, as he also ensures it at home. Once, when Fan Chi were rambling along with Master under the trees of the Reynolds, he remarked, "May I venture to ask how one may improve one's character, correct one's personal faults, and to discriminate in what is irrational?" "An excellent question," rejoined the Master. If a man put duty first and success after, will not that improve his character? If he attacks his own failings instead of those of others, will he not remedy his personal faults? For in Mourning's anger to forget his own safety and involve that of his relatives, is not this irrational? Once, when Fan Chi asked the measure of virtue, the master replied, "Love your fellow men." On his asking the meaning of knowledge, the master said, "Know your fellow men." Fan Chi, not having comprehended the master, added, "By promoting the straight and degrading the crooked, you can make even the crooked straight." Fan Chi withdrew, and afterwards meeting with Zhu Sai, said to him, "A little while ago, when I had an interview with the master and asked for a definition of knowledge, he replied, 'By promoting the straight and degrading the crooked, you can make even the crooked straight.' What can he have meant?" "What a rich maxim that is," replied Zhu Sai. "When Shun had the empire, he chose from among the multitude and promoted Cao Yao, whereupon all who were devoid of virtue disappeared. When Tang had the empire, he too chose from among the multitude and promoted Ai Yin, whereupon all who were devoid of virtue disappeared." On Zhu Kung inquiring the duties to a friend, the master replied, "Advise him conscientiously and guide him discreetly. If he be unwilling, then cease. Do not court humiliation." The philosopher Seng said, "The wise man by his culture gathers his friends, and by his friends develops his goodness of character." And that's the end of Book 12, concerning virtue, nobility and polity. I'm not entirely sure what to make of that as an overall, really. This one just seems to be sort of a general individual piece of advice. But yeah. There are a few little stands out, but I think those ones more are individual pieces that kind of come together. I guess virtue, as like in a book that is largely about virtue, the chapter on virtue is mostly just going to be a little generic. Still not bad. Let's press roll. Book 13, chiefly concerning government. When Zulu asked about the art of government, the master replied, "Be in advance of people, show them how to work." On his asking for something more, the master added, "Untiringly." When Chung Kung was the minister for the House of Qi, he asked for advice on the art of government, whereupon the master said, "Utilize first and foremost your subordinate officers, overlook their minor errors and promote those who are worthy and capable." "How may I know those who are worthy and capable?" he asked. "Promote those you do recognise," was the reply. "As to those whom you may fail to recognise, is it likely that others will neglect them?" "The Prince of Wei," said Zulu, "is awaiting you, sir, to take control of his administration. What will you undertake first, sir?" "One thing needed," replied the master, "is the correction of terms." "Are you as wide of the mark as that, sir?" said Zulu. "Why this correcting?" "How uncultivated you are, you," responded the master. "A wise man, in regard to what he does not understand, maintains an attitude of reserve. If terms be incorrect, the statements do not accord with facts. And when statements and facts do not accord, then business is not properly executed. When business is not properly executed, order and harmony do not flourish. When order and harmony do not flourish, then justice becomes arbitrary. When justice becomes arbitrary, the people do not know how to move at hand or foot. Hence, whatever a wise man states, he can always define. And what he so defines, he can always carry into practice. The wise man will on no accounts have anything remiss in his definitions." Now, I think that might be overstating the point a bit, but I do agree with him that definition is important. Like earlier in this text, there was a word that I didn't understand the definition of when it came to the way a wise man might hold back his speech, and so I made a point of noting that. I think it's important to represent the things that you don't understand and admit them. Because if you don't, then you never learn. That's a good point. Even if the idea of it being the collapse of society might be a bit much. On Fan Chi requesting to be taught agriculture, the master replied, "I am not as good as an old farmer for that." When he asked to be taught gardening, the master answered, "I am not as good as an old gardener for that." On Fan Chi withdrawing, the master said, "What a little-minded man is Fan Su. When a ruler loves good manners, his people will not let themselves be disrespectful. When a ruler loves justice, his people will not let themselves be unsubmissive. When a ruler loves good faith, his people will not venture to be insincere. And if you be like this, then people will come from every quarter carrying their children stacked on their backs. What does he want with learning agriculture?" Not sure I get that one. I mean, I guess it's something to do with delegation, but that's just a bit much. The master said, "A man may be able to recite the 300 odes, but if, when given a post in the administration, he proves to be without practical ability, or when sent anywhere on a mission, he is unable to himself answer a question, although his knowledge is extensive, of what use is it?" Now that's a good one. The difference between rote knowledge and application of knowledge. The master said, "If a ruler is himself upright, his people will do their duty without orders. If he himself is not upright, although he may order, they will not obey." The master said of Prince Ching, a scion of the ducal house of Wei, he dwelt well content in his house. When first he began to possess property, he called it a passable accumulation. When he had prospered somewhat, he called it passably complete, and when he had amassed plenty, he called it passably fine. When the master would travel in the way, Jan Yu drove him. "What a numerous population," remarked the master. "The people having grown so numerous, what next should be done for them?" asked Jan Yu. "Enrich them," was the reply. "And when you have enriched them, what next should be done?" he asked. "Educate them," was the answer. The master said, "Were any prince to employ me, in 12 months something could have been done. In 3 years the work could be completed." The master remarked, "How true is the saying, if good men ruled the country for 100 years, they could even tame the brutal and abolish capital punishment." The master said, no, I'm going to stop on that one for a second. They could even tame the brutal and abolish capital punishment. That's something that I sort of glossed over because, it's a fairly, cogent and well-respected idea in the modern day. This was written 2,400 years ago. There's something to note. The master said, if a kingly ruler were to arise, it would take a generation before virtue prevailed, however. The master said, if a man put himself aright, what difficulty will he have in the public service? If he cannot put himself aright, how is he going to put others right? Duke Ting of Lu inquired whether there were any one phrase by the adoption of which a country could be made prosperous. No phrase can be expected to have such force as that, replied Confucius. But there is the popular saying, it is hard to be a prince, and not easy to be a minister. If a prince perceived the difficulty of being a prince, may he not expect through that one phrase to prosper his country? Is there any one phrase, he asked, through which a country may be ruined? No phrase can be expected to have force such as that, replied Confucius. There is the popular saying, I should have no gratification of being a prince, unless none oppose my commands. If those are good and no one opposes them, that surely is well. If they are not good and no one opposes them, may he not expect that one phrase to ruin his country? When the Duke of Shi asked the meaning of good government, the master answered, the near are happy and the distant attracted. When Zhu Xiao were a magistrate of Chu Fu, he asked what should be his policy, whereupon the master said, Do not be in an hurry. Do not be intent on minor advantages. When one is in an hurry, nothing is thorough, and when one is intent on minor advantages, nothing great is accomplished. Once, when Fan Shi asked about virtue, the master said, "In private life be courteous, in handling public business be serious, with all men be conscientious. Even though you go among barbarians, you may not relinquish these virtues." Zhu Kang asked, "What must an official be like to merit his name?" "If in his personal conduct," replied the master, "he has sensibility to dishonour, and wheresoever he be sent will not disgrace his prince's commission, he may be said to merit his title." "I venture to ask, who may be ranked lower?" said Zhu Kang. "He whom his relatives commend as filial, or whose neighbours condemn as brotherly," was the answer. "I venture to ask the next lower," said Zhu Kang. "He is one who always stands by his words," was the answer. "He persists in all he undertakes. He is a man of grit, though a narrow outlook, yet perhaps he may be taken as of the third class." "What would you say of the present-day government officials?" asked Zhu Kang. "Fwag," said the master, "a set of pecks and hampers, unworthy to be taken into account." The master said, "If I cannot obtain men of the golden mean to teach, those whom I must have, let them be the ambitious and the discreet. The ambitious do make progress and take hold, and as to the discreet, there are things that they will refuse to sanction." The master said, "The true gentleman is friendly but not familiar. The inferior man is familiar but not friendly." Zhu Kang asked, "What would you say to the man who is liked by all his fellow townsmen?" "No worries, Abbe. I appreciate your lurking. Have a good breakfast. And give my best to your family, for whatever it's worth." "That is not sufficient," was the reply. "And what would you say of him who is hated by all his fellow townsmen?" "Nor is that sufficient," was the reply. "What is better is the good among his fellow townsmen like him, and that the bad hate him." The master said, "The true gentleman is easy to serve, yet difficult to please. If you attempt to please him in any improper way, he will be displeased. When it comes to appointing men in their work, he has regard to their capacity. The inferior man is hard to serve, yet easy to please. If you attempt to please him, even in an improper way, he will be pleased. In appointing men to their work, he expects them to be fit for everything." The master said, "The well-bred are dignified, but not pompous. The ill-bred are pompous, but not dignified." The master said, "The firmer spirit and resolute in character, the simple in manner, and the slower speech, are not far from virtue." Zulu asked, "What qualities must one possess to be entitled to be called an educated man?" "He who is earnest in spirit, persuasive in speech, and withal a gracious bearing," said the master, "may be called an educated man. Earnest in spirit and persuasive in speech with his friends, and a gracious bearing towards his brothers." And that's the end of book 13 concerning government. There are a few standouts here. Again, the repetition of the idea that if a person is upright in leadership, that people will be upright. I like especially the people having grown so numerous, what should be done for them, enrich them, and when you've enriched them, what next should be done, educate them is a good one. The spiel against capital punishment, or at least the idea that virtuous men would eliminate it, is nice. But yeah, I also quite like if a man puts himself aright, what difficulty he will have in public service, but if he cannot put himself aright, how is he going to put others aright? That strikes me as having something to it. Again, there's not like a general theme that I can pick out between this one, because it does seem to be genuinely a guide to governance. And it acknowledges the complexity of that subject, and addresses specific issues and inquiries, but it's good in that. And I appreciate it. It's weird. I don't think this is the longest. It feels like the longest stream I've done in a little while, but it's not actually that long comparatively. By the end of it, I think it will be the longest I've done in some time, but actually it's not been that long at all. But I think that's just a case of I'm spending time considering all of these more than I normally do for a text. Still, there's a lot to most of these. Even the ones I mostly disagree with. I'm still puzzling over that little turtle or tortoise maxim. I don't know. But yeah, a few of these really are standout. Right. Book 15. Chiefly concerning government and certain rulers. When Hsien asked the meaning of dishonour, the master said, when his country is well governed to be thinking only of pay, when his country is ill governed to be thinking only of pay. That is dishonour for a man. Hsien again asked, if a man refrains from ambition, boasting, resentment and selfish desire, it may, I suppose, be counted to him for virtue. It may be counted for difficult, said the master, but whether that alone is virtue, I know not. The master said, the scholar whose regard is his comforts is unworthy to be deemed a scholar. The master said, when law and order prevail in the land, a man may be bold in speech and bold in actions. When the land lacks law and order, though he may take bold action, he should be restrained in his speech. The master said, a man of principle is sure to have something good to say, but he who has something good to say is not necessarily a man of principle. A virtuous man is sure to be courageous. A courageous man is not necessarily a man of virtue. Nan Kung Kwa remarked to Confucius by way of inquiry, is it not a fact that Prince I excelled as an archer, and thou could propel a boat on dry land? You'll neither die. Oh, sorry. Hang on. Oh, I've misunderstood. Sorry. There is a name. So. Is it not a fact that Prince I excelled as an archer, and thou could propel a boat on dry land? You neither died a natural death, while you and Chi, who took personal interest in agriculture, become possessed of the empire. The master made no reply, but when Nan Kung Kwa had withdrawn, he observed, a scholar indeed is such a man. Such a man has true estimation of virtue. There may perhaps be men of the higher type who fail in virtue, but there has never been one of the lower type who possessed virtue. The master said, can love be other than exacting, or loyalty refrain from admonition? The master said, to be poor and not complain is difficult. To be rich and not arrogant is easy. When Zulu asked what constituted the character of the perfect man, the master replied, if you have the sagacity of Sang Wu Chung, the purity of Kung Ch'o, the courage of Trang Zhu of Pien, and the skill of Jan Chui, and if he refines these with the arts of courtesy and harmony, then indeed he may be deemed a perfect man. But what need is there, he added, for the perfect man of the present day to be like this? Let him, when he sees anything to his advantage, think where it be right. When he meets with danger, be ready to lay down his life, and, however long-standing the undertaking, let him not belie the professions of his whole life. Then he too may be deemed a perfect man. The master put a question to Kung Ming Chia about Kung Shu Wen Zhu, and said, is it really true that your master neither talks nor laughs nor accepts anything? That arises from the exaggeration of reports, answered Kung Ming Chia. Our master talks only at the right time, hence people do not tire of his talk. He only laughs when he is really pleased, hence people do not tire of his laugh. He only accepts things when it is right to do so, hence men do not tire of his accepting. Is that so? Said the master. Can that indeed be so? The minister Chuan, formerly a retainer of Kung Shu Wen Zhu, afterwards went up to court in company with Wen Zhu. The master, on hearing it, observed, "Wen well deserves to be considered a promoter of culture." When the master was speaking of the unprincipled character of Duke Ling of Wei, Kang Zhu observed, "Such being the case, how is it he does not lose his throne?" "Zhang Shu Yu," answered Confucius, "has charge of the envoys. The reader To has charge of the ancestral temple. Wang Sanxia commands the forces. And such being the case, how should he lose his throne?" The master said, "He who speaks without modesty will perform with difficulty." When Zulu asked what constituted a man's duty to his prince, the master said, "Never deceive him, and then you may boldly withstand him." The master said, "The progress of the nobler-minded man is upwards. The progress of the inferior man is downwards." The master said, "The men of old study for the sake of self-improvement. The men of the present day study for approbation of others." Shao Po Yu, having sent a messenger to convey his respects to Confucius, Confucius made him sit down along with him and questioned him, asking, "What is your master doing now?" The messenger replied, "My master is seeking to make his faults fewer, but has not yet succeeded." When the messenger had withdrawn, the master observed, "What a messenger! What a messenger!" I like that one, that's a good one. That's a nice story, I like that. The master said, He who does not occupy the office does not discuss its policy." Was that, did we already hear that in an older book? I don't know. I feel that was in the first book. The philosopher Zhengzhu, said, "A wise man, even in his thoughts, does not stray from his own duty." The master said, "The art of a man is modest in what he says, but surpasses in what he does." The master said, "There are three characteristics of the noble man's life, which I cannot lay claim. Being virtuous, he is free from care. Possessing knowledge, he is free from doubts. Being courageous, he is free from fear." "That is what you say yourself," replied Zhu Kang. Zhu Kang, being in the habit of making comparisons, the master observed, "How worthy Zhu must be. As for me, I have not the time to spare." The master said, "A wise man is not distressed that people do not know him. He is distressed at his own lack of ability." The master said, "Is not he a man of real worth, who does not anticipate deceit, nor imagine that people will doubt his word, and yet who has immediate perception thereof when present?" Wei Shengmu, sneering at Confucius, said, "Chu, what are you doing with this perching here and perching there? You're not making a business of talking to please people." "I should not dare to talk only to please people," replied Confucius, "and I should hate to be obstinately immovable." The master said, "A good horse is not praised for its strength, but for its character." Someone asked, "What do you think about the principle of rewarding enmity with kindness?" "With what, then, would you reward kindness?" asked the master. "Reward enmity with just treatment, and kindness with kindness." No one knows me, alas," exclaimed the master. "Why do you say, master, that no one knows you?" said Zhu Kang. "I make no complaint against heaven," replied the master, "nor blame men, but though my studies are lowly, my mind soars aloft, and does not heaven know me?" Kung Po Liao, having spoken against Zhu Lu and Qi Sung, Zhu Fu, Cheng Po informed Confucius thereof, and said, "Our Lord's mind is undoubtedly being disturbed by Kung Po Liao, but I am still strong enough to have his carcass exposed in the marketplace." The master replied, "If my principles are going to prevail, it is so fated. If they are going to fail, it is so fated. What can Kung Po Liao do against destiny?" The master said, "Some good men withdraw from the world. Withdrawal from fatherland comes next in order. Next is from uncongenital uncongenial looks, and next is from uncongenial language. The master said there are 7 men who have done this. I feel it's important to note these little individual paragraphs are separated by a little slash or tilde thing in the book. That was separated from the other. Like, the master said there are 7 men who have done this. That is separated as its own little section. I don't know what the significance of that is. It almost feels like a typo, but... On one occasion, when Zulu happened to spend the night at the Stone Gate, the gate opener asked him, "Where are you from?" "Master Kunz," replied Zulu. "Is he not the one who knows he cannot succeed and keeps on trying to do so?" was the response. Zhu Chang said, "The Book of History says that when Cao Sun observed the imperial mourning, he did not speak for 3 years. What might be the meaning of that? Why need you specialise Cao Sun? All the men of old did the same," answered Confucius. "When a prince died, all his officers attended to their several duties in obedience to the Prime Minister for 3 years. The master said, when those in our position are fond of orderly behaviour, service from the people is easily commanded. When Zulu asked what should be the character of a man of the nobler order, the master replied, he should cultivate himself unfailingly to respect others. Will it suffice to be like this? Asked Zulu. He should cultivate himself so as to ease the lot of others, with a reply. And is this sufficient? Asked Zulu. He should cultivate himself so as to ease the lot of the people. He should cultivate himself so as to ease the lot of the people. Even Yao and Shun ever remained assiduous about this. Yuan Zhang sat squatting and waiting as the master approached, who said to him, "When young being mannerless, when grown up doing nothing worthy of mention, when old not dying, this is being a rogue." With this he hit him on the shank with his staff. A youth from the village of Chue were acting a messenger for Confucius. So someone said concerning him, "He has made good progress, I suppose." "I notice," replied the master, "that he occupies the seat of adult age, and I notice that he walks on a level with his seniors. It is not that he seeks to progress, he wants speedy arrival." That's the end of Book 14, chiefly concerning government and certain rulers. Yeah. We are a multicultural people. First one withdraws from the world, then from the fatherland, then from uncongenial looks, then from uncongenial words. It's interesting. Yeah. I will do. You have a good dinner, will you? Thank you for stopping by. Yeah. Again, there's not like an underlying theme here that I really can pick out, but I will return once again to the story with the messenger. "Sheepa, you haven't sent a messenger to convey his respects to Confucius." Confucius made him sit down along with him and questioned him, asking, "What is your master doing now?" The messenger replied, "My master is seeking to make his faults fewer, but has not yet succeeded." When the messenger had withdrawn, the master observed, "What a messenger, what a messenger." Am I? Yeah, that's fair. I don't know. I'm just getting caught up in it, I guess, a bit. But yeah, I appreciate it. I am taking care of myself. Yeah. I don't know. I'm sort of like the book is thinking about things like this always puts me into a sort of relaxed state of mind. But yeah, but I am fine. I had a good 6 hours today. I like that story about the messenger because it is. I feel like it's been mentioned before, but the idea of drawing inspiration from the lower sort of places. The messenger obviously is here, like he's a man who is of no particular consequence, being sent as a runner. But there's wisdom to be gained from his word. And I like the fact that not only is it recognised that that's the case, but also that he is actively recognised and commented upon, and considered worthy of being recorded here. It's good to put into principle ideas like that. Still. Pressing on. Book 15. Chiefly on the maintenance of principles and character. When Duke Ling Wei asked Confucius about military tactics, Confucius replied, "With the appurtenance of worship, I have indeed an acquaintance, but as to military matters I have never studied them." Next day he straightway took his departure. On the way in Chen, their supplies failed, and his followers were so ill that they could not stand. Zulu, with some irritation, sought an interview and said, "Does a man of the higher order also have to suffer want?" "The superior man bears want unshaken," replied the master. "The inferior man in want becomes demoralized." "Zhu," said the master, "you regard me as a man of multifarious study, and retains all in mind, eh?" "Yes," answered he, "but maybe it is not so." "No," was the reply, "I have but one principle connecting all." "You," said the master, "there are few who understand virtue." The master said, "May not Shun be instanced as one who made no effort, yet the empire were well governed? For what effort did he make? Ordering himself in all seriousness, he did nothing but maintain the correct imperial attitude." When Zhu Chang asked how to succeed with others, the master made answer, "If you are sincere and truthful in what you say, and trustworthy and circumspect in what you do, then although you be in the land of the barbarians, you will succeed with them. But if you are not sincere and truthful in what you say, and untrustworthy and not circumspect in what you do, are you likely to succeed even in your own country? When standing, see these principles there in front of you. When in your carriage, see them resting on the yoke. Then you will succeed everywhere." Zhu Chang inscribed these counsels on his sash. The master said, "What a straight man with a record are you? When the country were well governed, he were like an arrow. And when the country were ill governed, he was still straight as an arrow. What a noble man is Chu Po Yu. When the country is well governed, he holds office. When the country is ill governed, he can roll up his portfolio and keep it in his bosom." Not to enlighten one who can be enlightened is to waste a man. To enlighten one who cannot be enlightened is to waste words. The intelligent man neither wastes his man nor his words. The master said, "The resolute scholar and the virtuous man will not seek life at the expense of virtue. Some even sacrifice their lives to crown their virtue." When Zhu Kang asked about the practices of virtue, the master replied, "A workman who wants to do his work well must first sharpen his tools. In whatever state you dwell, take service with the worthiest of its ministers, and make friends of the most virtuous of its scholars." Yin Yuan once asked about the administration of a state. The master replied, "Adopt the calendar of Xia, ride in the state carriage of Yin, wear the cap of Shu, in music adopt the shower dances, banish the songs of Chen, and avoid the specious men. The songs of Cheng are licentious, and specious men dangerous." So no licentious songs? That doesn't seem very fair. We love a good licentious song. The master said, "Who heeds not the future will find sorrow at hand." "It is all in vain," said the master. I've never yet seen a man so fond as virtue as a female beauty. A female there is in brackets. This one again harkens back to another. I've never seen a man who loves virtue so much as women. I'm sort of wondering if these are things that are considered important enough that he's repeated, that they're being repeated from the same quotation, or if he just said these multiple times. And maybe these are recorded from across a sort of period of time. I don't know. The master said, "He who demands much from himself and little from others will avoid resentment." The master said, "If a man does not ask himself, what am I to make of this? What am I to make of that? There is nothing whatever I can make of it." The master said, "Men who associate together the livelong day, and whose conversation never rises to what is just and right, but whose delight is in deeds of petty shrewdness, how hard is their case?" Well, he's right there. That describes rats pretty well, and though rat, well, it's pretty hard to be a rat. Fair play to them. The master said, "The noble man takes the right as his foundation principle, reduces it to practice with all courtesy, carries it out with modesty, and renders it perfect with sincerity. Such is the noble man." The master remarked, "The noble man is pained over his own incompetency. He is not pained that others ignore him." The master said, "The noble man seeks what he wants in himself. The inferior man seeks it from others." The master said, "The noble man upholds his dignity without striving for it. He is sociable without entering any clique." The master said, "The wise man does not appreciate a man because of what he says or does. What he says, nor does he depreciate what he says because of the man." "Is there any one word," asked Zhu Kang, "which could be adopted as a lifelong rule of conduct?" The master replied, "Is not sympathy the word? Do not do to others what you would not like yourself." The master said, "In my treatment of men, whom I have unduly disparaged or whom I have unduly extolled, if there be one whom I have so extolled, there is that by which he has been tested. Thus, and with such people, the three dynasties pursued their straightforward course." The master said, "I can still go back to the days when a recorder left temporary blanks in his records, when a man who had a horse would lend it to another to ride. Now, alas, such a condition no more exists." I'm not sure again about the temporary blank thing. That's a reference that goes over my head. But I'm guessing it's something to do with trust. The master said, "Plausible words confound good morals. The trifling impatience may confound the great project." The master said, "Though all hate a man, one must investigate the cause, and though all like him, one must also investigate the cause." The master said, "A man can enlarge his principles. It is not his principles that enlarges the man." Hey, welcome back, Abbe. I hope your breakfast was good. I'm trying to think if there's anything that we've... Yeah, I can't think of any one notable thing that has been said since we've been missed. It's weird. Each of these passages is its own little thing, but I do see them so much as an whole. Strange. But yeah, welcome back, and I appreciate you being there. The master said, "To err and not reform may indeed be called error." The master said, "I have spent the whole day without food and the whole night without sleep in order to think. If it were no use, it is better to learn. The master said, "The wise man makes duty, not a living, his aim. But there is hunger even for a farmer, and sometimes emolument for a scholar. But the wise man is anxious about his duty, not about poverty." The master said, if a man intellectually realizes a given principle, but if his moral character does not enable him to live up to it, even though he has reached it, he will decline from it. Though intellectually he has attained it, and his moral character enables him to live up to it, if he does not govern people with dignity, they will not respect him. And though he is intellectually attained to it, his moral character enables him to live up to it, and he governs with dignity, if he instigates the people who act in a disorderly manner, he is still lacking in excellence. The master said, a man of the highest type may not be distinguished in minor responsibilities. He can undertake great ones. An inferior man cannot undertake great responsibilities, but may be distinguished in minor ones. The master said, virtue is more to man than either water or fire. I have seen men die through walking into water or fire, but I have never seen a man die through walking the path of virtue. The master said, he upon whom a moral duty devolves should not give way even to his master. The master said, the wise man is intelligently, not blindly loyal. The master said, in serving one's prince, one should give careful attention to his business and make the pay a secondary consideration. The master said, in teaching there should be no class distinctions. The master said, those who are different do not plan. Those whose ways are different do not make plans together. The master said, in language, perspicuity is everything. The state bandmaster Mien once called to see him. On arriving at the steps, the master said, here are the steps. On coming to the mat, he said, here is your mat. When all were seated, the master informed them, so and so is here and so is there. When the bandmaster had gone, Zhu Cheng inquired, is it the proper thing to tell a bandmaster those things? Yes, answered the master. Undoubtedly it is the proper thing for a blind bandmaster's guide to do. That's the end of book 15, which was on governance. I'm struggling to remember the subject notes. Chiefly on the maintenance of principles and character, that's the one. Again, I don't think there's like an overarching theme on this one that I can particularly recognise, but I do think that each and every one of those is pretty solid, even among the rest of the book. Each principle espoused there is pretty good, but especially one that struck me is, in teaching there should be no class distinctions. That's again, like when I mentioned with capital punishment, it was remarkable because it was 2,000 years ago, and it was something that had only really come into prospect in modern times. Still in modern times there is no real agreement on that, though it is an excellent principle. Confucius was decidedly ahead of his time on several of these points. Anyway, a drink of water and press on. Book 16, concerning ministerial responsibility et alia. Again, I'm not sure about et alia there. I think that might be a Latin suffix, but I'm not exactly sure what is meant by it. Oh, and this one, is this, oh no, I was about to say, this one looks like it's a whole text, but no, it's just the first little section, it's a very long one. The chief of the house at Qi, being about to invade the minor principality of Chuan Yu, Jan Yu and Shi Lu interviewed Confucius and said, our chief is about to commence operations against Chuan Yu Fa. Yu, said Confucius, is not this misdeed yours? The head of Chuan Yu were appointed by the ancient kings to preside over the sacrifices of the Eastern men. The Fa also is within the boundaries of our state, and its ruler is directed sacrificial minister of the crown. What business has your chief with attacking it? It is our master's wish, said Jan Yu. Neither of us two ministers wishes it. Chu, replied Confucius. Chu Jen had a saying, let him who is allowed to use his ability retain his position, and let him who cannot retire. Of what use is he as a blind man's guard, who neither holds him up when tottering, or supports him when falling. Moreover, your remark is quite wrong. For when a tiger or a wild bull escapes from its cage, or when tortoiseshell or a precious stone is injured in its cabinet, whose fault is it? But now, said Jan Yu, Chuan Yu is strongly fortified and near the Pa. If our chief does not take it now, it must hereafter become a cause of anxiety to his descendants. Chu, replied Confucius, the man of honour detests those who decline to say plainly that they want a thing and insist on making excuses in regard thereto. I have heard that the ruler of a kingdom, or the chief of an house, is not concerned about his people being few, but about a lack of equitable treatment. Nor is he concerned over poverty, but over the presence of discontent. Whether there is equity, there is no poverty. Where concord prevails, there is no lack of people, and where contentment reigns, there are no upheavals. Such a state of things existing, then, if any outlying people are still unsubmissive, he attracts them by the promotion of culture and morality. And when he has attracted them, he makes them contented. But here are you two, you and Chu, assisting your chief. For though an outlying people are unsubmissive, he cannot attract them, and though the state is disorganized and disrupted, he cannot preserve it, and yet he is planning to take up arms within his own state. I myself fear that Chi's son's cause for anxiety does not lie in Chuan Yu, but within his own gate screen, his palace. That's an interesting one. A rebuke to the ministers. Confucius said, when good government prevails in the empire, civil ordinance and punitive expeditions issue from the emperor. When good government fails in the empire, civil ordinance and punitive expeditions issue from the nobles. When they issue from a noble, it is rare that the empire be not lost within 10 generations. When they issue from a noble's minister, it is rare the empire not be lost within 5 generations. But when a minister's minister holds command in the kingdom, it is rare if it not be lost within 3 generations. When there is good government in the empire, its policy is not in the hands of ministers, and when there is good government in the empire, the people do not even discuss it. And here we have something that I do disagree with. Here Confucius places importance of good governance on hierarchy, and power being concentrated at the top. I don't necessarily agree with him there. But he's not wrong about it leading to things being stable, I suppose. Confucius said, there are 3 kinds of friends that are beneficial, and 3 that are harmful. Make friends with the upright, with the faithful, and with the well-informed is beneficial. Make friends with the plausible, the insinuating, with the glib is harmful. Confucius said, there are 3 ways of pleasure-seeking that are beneficial, and there are 3 that are harmful. Seek pleasure in the refinements of manners and music. Seek pleasure in discussing the excellencies of others. Seek pleasure in making many worthy friends. These are beneficial. Seek pleasure in unbridled enjoyment. Seek pleasure in looseness and gadding. Seek pleasure in conviviality. These are harmful. I wonder again if that's a translation issue, but the idea of conviviality being different to having worthy friends is a little bit, well, seems a bit much. Confucius said, there are 3 errors to be avoided when in the presence of a superior. To speak before being called upon, which may be termed forwardness. To not speak, or not to speak when called upon, which may be termed timidity. And to speak before noting a superior's expression, which may be called blindness. Confucius said, there are 3 things the nobler type of man is on his guard against. In the period of youth, before his physical nature is settled down, he guards against lust. Having reached his prime, when his physical nature has now attained its mature strength, he guards against combativeness. When he has reached old age and his physical nature is already decaying, he guards against acquisitiveness. Confucius said that the man of noble mind holds 3 things in awe. He holds the divine will in awe, he holds the great in awe, and he holds the precepts of the sages in awe. A baser man, not knowing the divine will, does not stand in awe of it. He takes liberties with the great and makes mock of the precepts of the sages. Confucius said, "Those who have innate wisdom take highest rank. Those who acquire it by study rank next. Those who learn despite natural limitations come next. But those who have limited ability and yet will not learn, these form the lowest class of men." Confucius said, "The wise man has 9 points of thoughtful care. In looking, his care is to observe distinctly." Tanner, good to have you. You're coming in slightly near the end of the Analects of Confucius, but luckily it's all in individual little paragraphs, so you can follow along pretty easily without having to help the rest. I'm glad to have you here. I appreciate it. I'm always happy to have more company. Ah, that's fair enough. Well, I appreciate you haven't been here the whole time then. Confucius said, "The wise man has 9 points of thoughtful care. In looking, his care is to observe distinctly. In listening, his care is to apprehend clearly. In his appearance, his care is to be kindly. In his manner, his care is to be courteous. In speaking, his care is to be conscientious. In his duties, his care is to be earnest. In doubt, his care is to seek information. In anger, he has a care for the consequences. And when he has an opportunity for gain, his care is whether it be right." Confucius said, "They look up at the good as if fearing not to reach it, and shrink from evil as if it from scalding water. I have seen such men, as I have heard much saying. They dwell in seclusion to think out their aims and practice right living, in order to extend their principles. I have heard such sayings, but I have never seen such men." Chen Kang once asked Po Yu, "Have you ever had any lesson different from the rest of us from the master?" "No," was the reply. "He was once standing alone, and as I hastened across the hall, he remarked, 'Have you studied the Odes?' 'No,' I replied. 'If you do not study the Odes,' he said, 'you'll have nothing to use in conversation.' On going out, I set myself to study the Odes. Another day he were again standing alone, and I hastened across the hall. He asked, 'Have you studied the rules of ceremony?' 'No,' I replied. 'If you do not study the ceremonies, you will have no grounding.' On going out, I set myself to study the ceremonies. These are the 2 lessons I have received.' When Chen Kang come away, he remarked with delight, 'I asked one thing and obtained 3. I have learnt about the Odes, I have learnt about the ceremonies, and I have learnt that the wise man keeps his son at a distance.'" That's the end of book 16, which was concerning ministerial responsibility and alia. Again, I don't know what alia means. A lot of those seem to be more personal to Confucius' particular view. Less broad principles and more general ideas of how life should be lived. And some of them I agree with, some of them I don't. I think all of them is interesting. The standout one to me, though, is the 9 concerns of noble men, which I think is a good. It's a good little tool for thinking about things. It's not necessarily perfect in that I agree with everything the wise man said, but it's a good way of. It's a good little checklist for checking through your priorities. 9 points of thoughtful care. In looking, his care is to observe distinctly. In listening, to apprehend clearly. In his appearance, care to be kindly. In manner, to be courteous. In speaking, be conscientious. In duties, to be earnest. In doubt, to seek information. In anger, to have care for consequences. In an opportunity for gain, to have care whether it's right. It's interesting. Some of these I think are better than others in their individual precepts. That one I think is worth just remembering in and of itself almost exclusively. I don't know. I guess it must be hard to sort of, if you're doing a book like this, if you're accumulating all the knowledge of this person that you consider great, to know which ones to maintain and which to dismiss. Yeah, it's a good one. The Edge is about to come on, so I won't go into the next chapter just immediately. Although I've just noticed that I have all 3 snoozes from my ads. I thought those were per month, but I guess they're per stream, don't they? I hadn't used it before yesterday because you don't get them for the first month of being an affiliate. So still, that's interesting. Something to know. Yeah. So while we wait for these to play and to work over, we'll do a little bit more thought on the general principle of the text, which it's interesting. I think what I said at the start of this, with my understanding of Confucianism, still holds true. It does concern itself principally with filial piety, the idea of hierarchy, but it has a much more nuanced view of filial piety and hierarchy than often gets discussed in these sorts of things. The idea, for example, that you can, that respect flows both ways. I mean, obviously, it's one of those things that is often said of filial piety, but is often unobserved, and yet still tends to be, considered or to be accepted. The idea that one can argue, for example, with their parents without it being a violation. In fact, that one is almost required to do so, so long as they are respectful in the way that they do it and do not hesitate. The hydrate rewards, I think it has a cooldown, like time-wise, but it shouldn't be limited, I don't think. Let me double check. Hydrate. All rewards claimed for the stream. What? Okay, apparently some of my rewards are just messed up a little bit. Yeah, apparently it is limited. I gotta go back and look over some of them. I put it on a time cooldown just so that it wasn't a constant, do the thing where I'm always drinking. But yeah, no, it shouldn't be. That's my bad. I apologise. But hey, look, I'm sorry I'm too incompetent to let you take care of me. I will hydrate because you tell me to. It's fine. I'll have it fixed by next stream. I'm very sorry. Here, I'll drink again. In fact, you know what? I'll finish my water and go get another bottle there, just to show my sincerity. But yeah, that's... Apparently some of the redeems are messed up. I thought I'd done them right. Ignore any bad sounds you hear, it's all fun. I definitely did drop something. Cool. Never. It's weird. You'll notice I don't take a lot of breaks during my streams. I make a point to go ahead of time, and because of the sort of limitation of that always being reading and my voice giving out, I can't really go long enough that I ever need to really make a worry of it. But yeah. And there, a drink from the fresh bottle. Actually, that is a good point. I won't have some cheese, but I will have another lozenge. Given that it's been an hour, take care of myself. Thank you for standing up for me and bullying me into looking after myself. Whoa. I appreciate you caring for me like this. There's probably a relationship here I could make between the duty of the duties of filial ministers and caring for their sovereign or something. But I don't like the idea of placing myself as sovereign object, so I won't do that. I will just say that I appreciate you. But no, there's another principle I can take care. One should have no friends who are one's inferior nor one's superior. There we are. Yeah, that's true. Abba has the crown, of course, you're right. But yeah. But to have no friends who are one's inferior or one's superior. That's the principle to hold up to. And I'm glad that all of you hold me to the same standards I should hold you to. I do strongly appreciate it. That's just done. How much done have we got this? So we've got about 15 pages. Although apparently we also got 3 more books, so 3 more? 4 more actually included in this one, so Not too much more in terms of page count. I think probably what, another half an hour. But yeah, I'll take one final drink just to show my full. I can't tell if you're addressing that to Plague or to myself, but Abbe, you have all of our hearts. For you are the master of virtues. You show diligence and dedication with your, I think 50 Street was last time, so 51 at this point. With you making sure that I drink and take care of myself as proper, and all these things. Anyway, yeah, I don't know what's up with the redeems. I will go and fix them. I've never run into this trouble before, but then it has been a while since I've done a long stream. So, we'll get it sorted. Nah. Oh, thank you, Abbe. I feel like I should try and make some sort of like humble denial, but I also believe that all people are worthy of infinite love. So I'll agree with you and say that you too deserve all the love, as do all of you. I was about to like say something. I don't know that I actually bring it up very often, but I do have a name for you guys in my community. You guys are my spirits of the earth, those vital beings that maintain the land and the world around you, and I do strongly appreciate you. But yeah, well, I cannot say enough how much I do so. Now though, let's press on in case we get another hour and have to do another ad break. I hate doing the ad breaks. I know they're good for me and they bring in money and stuff, but yeah, ads disgusting. So, now see, the downside of having a limited model like this is my reaction to both of those is I've immediately put my own hand to my heart and smiled directly at the little chat box, but I can't really emote that given the nature of things. But I hope you know that I am sincerely grateful for all of you. Pressing on. Book 18. Record unsuitable calls and sundry maxims. The master said, by nature men nearly resemble each other. In practice they grow wide apart. The master said, it is only the very wisest and the very stupidest who never change. When the master arrived at Wu City, he heard everywhere the sound of stringed instruments and singing, whereupon he smiled and laughingly said, Why use a cleaver to kill a chicken? A while ago, sir, replied Zhu Yu, I heard you say, when men of rank have learned wisdom, they love their fellow men. When the common people have learned wisdom, they are easily commanded. My disciples, said the master, Yen's remark is right. What I said before were only in jest. Zhu Chang asked Confucius the meaning of virtue, to which Confucius replied, to be able everywhere one goes, to carry far things into practice, constitutes virtue. On begging to know what they were, he was told, they are courtesy, magnanimity, sincerity, earnestness, and kindness. With courtesy you will avoid insult. With magnanimity you will win all. With sincerity men will trust you. With earnestness you will have success. With kindness you will be well fitted to command others. Parsi. Is that right? I think again, names I'm struggling with a little here. HSR. Parsi was sent a formal invitation, and the master inclined to go. But Zulu observed, once upon a time I heard you say so. With a man who is personally engaged in a wrongful enterprise, the man of honour declines to associate. Parsi is not holding Changmu in revolt, but what? He is holding Changmu in revolt. What will it be like, sir, if you go there? True, said the master. I did use those words. But is it not said of the really are, you may grind it and it will not grind down? Also is it not said the really white, that you may dye it, but it will not turn black? Am I indeed a bit of gourd? Must I like it? Be hung up and ne'er eaten? The master said, have you ever heard the 6 good words and the 6 things that obscure them? Never, was the reply. Sit down then, I will tell you. Love of kindness without a love to learn finds itself obscured by foolishness. Love of knowledge without a love to learn finds itself obscured by loose speculation. Love of honesty without a love to learn finds itself obscured by harmful candour. Love of straightforwardness without a love to learn finds itself obscured by misdirected judgment. Love of daring without a love to learn finds itself obscured by insubordination. And love for strength of character without a love to learn finds itself obscured by intractability. The Master said, "My sons, my disciples, why do you not study the poets? Poetry is able to stimulate the mind. It can train observation. It can encourage social intercourse. It can modify the vexations of life. From it the student learns to fulfill his more immediate duty to his parents, and his remoter duty to his prince, and in it he may become widely acquainted with the names of birds and beasts, plants and trees." The Master said to his son, "O you, have you studied the Cho Nan and the Chao Nan? It is not the man who does not study the Cho Nan and the Chao Nan odes like one who stands with his face hard up against a wall, eh?" The Master said, "He who shams a stern appearance while inwardly is a weakling can only be compared with the vulgar and low. Indeed, is he not like the thief who sneaks through or skulks over walls?" The Master said, "To proclaim on the road what you hear on the way is virtue thrown away." "These servile fellows," said the Master, "how is it possible to serve one's prince along with them? For obtaining their positions, they are in anxiety to obtain it, and when they have it, they are in anxiety lest they lose it. And if men are in anxiety about losing their positions, there is no length to which they will not go." "In olden times," said the Master, "the people had free votes, which nowadays perhaps no longer exist. Our spirits in olden times meant liberality in detail. The our spirit of today means utter looseness. Dignity of old meant reserve. Dignity today means resentment and offence. Simple-mindedness of old meant straightforwardness. Simple-mindedness today is nothing but a mask for cunning. The Master said, "Artful address and an insinuating demeanour seldom accompany virtue." "I wish I could do without speaking," said the Master. "If you did not speak, sir," said Zuko, "what should we disciples pass on to others?" "What speech has heaven?" replied the Master. "The 4 seasons run their courses, and all things flourish. In what speech has heaven?" Ju Pei wished to see Confucius, who excused himself on the grounds of sickness. When the messenger had gone out, at the door he took up his harpsichord and began to sing, so that Ju Pei might hear it. Sire Wan, asking about the 3 years' mourning, suggested that 1 year was long enough. If, he said, a well-bred man be 3 years without exercising his manners will certainly degenerate, and if for 3 years he makes no use of music, his music will certainly go to ruin. In 1 year the last year's grain is finished, and the new grain has been garnered. The seasonal friction sticks have made their varying fires. A year would be enough. Would you then feel at ease in eating good rice and wearing fine clothes? Asked the Master. I should, was the reply. If you would feel at ease, then do so. But a well-bred man, when mourning, does not relish good food when he eats it, does not enjoy music when he hears it, and does not feel at ease when he is when in a comfortable dwelling. Therefore he affords those things. But now you would feel at ease, so go and do them. When Sai had gone out, the Master said, "The unfeelingness of the Sai Yu. Only when a child is 3 years old does it leave its parents' arms. 3 years' mourning is the universal mourning everywhere. And Yu was not he the object of his parents' affection for 3 years?" The Master said, "How hard is the case of the man who stuffs himself with food the livelong day, never applying his mind to anything. I don't know checkers or chess to play. Even to do that is surely better than nothing at all." Zulu once asked, "Does a man of nobler class hold courage in estimation?" "Men of the nobler class," said the Master, "deem rectitude the highest thing. It is men of the nobler class with courage but without rectitude who rebel. It is men of the lower orders with courage but without rectitude who become robbers. Do men of the nobler class detest others? Asked Zhu Kang. They do detest others, answered the master. They detest men who divulge other people's misdeeds. They detest those low, base people who slander their superiors. They detest the bold and the mannerless. They detest the persistently forward who are yet obtuse. And have you, Zhu, those whom you detest? He asked. I detest those who count prying out information as wisdom. I detest those who count absence of modesty as courage. I detest those who count denouncing a man's private affairs as straightforwardness, replied Zhu Kang. The master said, of all people, maids and servants are hardest to keep in your hands. If you are friendly with them, they lose their deference. If you are reserved with them, they resent it. The master said, if a man reach 40 and yet be disliked by his fellows, he will be so to the end. And that's the end of book 17, regarding unsuitable calls and sundry maxims. That's a bit of a mixed one. There's some that one feels like it is stuff that just didn't fit in other books, really. A couple of stands out though. I like the celebration of poetry. I like the idea of the the 6 loves. What is it? Yeah. The 6 good words and the 6 things that obscure them. That's an interesting one. Although the idea that love of learning is the thing that reveals all and turns these potential flaws into virtues is a bit The idea that virtues and flaws are one and the same, if not treated with temperance, I think is a good idea. Which, anyhow, drink of water and then we press on. I've got to hydrate myself because I failed to allow you to hydrate me. Wow. Book 18, Concerning Ancient Worthies. The Viscount of Wei withdrew from serving the tyrant Chu. Viscount of Qi were made a slave. Pekan remonstrated with the tyrant and suffered death. The master said, the Yin dynasty thus had 3 men of virtue. Something strikes me as a little off about that one. Viscount Wei withdrawing makes sense, and Pekan remonstrating with it makes sense. Viscount of Qi being made a slave, I don't know why that makes him a man of virtue. It's an unfortunate thing that happened, and maybe his bearer made him virtuous, but it's a strange thing that be his only epitaph. Hui of Liu Xia, HSIA, is the way that second is. Hui of Liu Xia filled the office of chief criminal judge and repeatedly dismissed. People said to him, "Is it not time, sir, for you to be going elsewhere?" If I do honest public service, said he, where shall I go and not be often dismissed? And if I am willing to do dishonest public service, what need is there for me to leave the land of my parents? Chang Chu and Xie Ni were cultivating their land together when Confucius was passing their way, so he sent Su Lo to inquire for the ford. And who is that holding the reins in the carriage? Asked Chang Chu. It's Kung Chiu, replied Zhu Lu. Is it Kung Chiu of Liu Confucius? He asked. It is, with a reply. Then he knows the ford, said he. Zhu Lu then questioned Xie Ni. Who are you, sir? Asked Xie Ni. I am Cheng Yu, was the answer. Are you a disciple of Kung Chiu of Liu? Yes, replied he. All the world is rushing headlong like a swollen torrent, and who will help you to remedy it? He asked. As for you, instead of following a leader who flees from one after another, would you not better follow those who flee the world entirely? With this, he further raking his seeds without a pause. Zhu Lu went off and reported to his master what they said. He remarked with surprise, I cannot herd with birds and beasts, if I may not associate with mankind, with whom am I to associate? Did right rule prevail in the world, I should not be taking part in reforming it. Once when Zulu were following the master on a journey, he happened to fall behind. Meeting an old man carrying a basket on his staff, Zulu asked him, "Have you seen my master, sir?" "You," said the old man, "whose 4 limbs know not toil, and who cannot distinguish the 5 grains. Who may your master be?" With that he planted his staff in the ground and commenced weeding. Zulu joined his hand together in salutation and stood waiting. The old man kept Zulu for the night, killed a fowl, prepared millet, and gave him the wheat, introducing also his 2 sons. Next morning Zulu went his way and reported his adventure. "He is a recluse," said the master, and sent Zulu back again to see him. On his arrival the old man had gone. Whereupon Zulu said to the sons, "It is not right to refuse to serve one's country. If the regulations between old and young in family life may not be set aside, how is it that your father set aside the duty between a prince and his ministers? In his desire to maintain his own personal purity, he subverts one of the main principles of society. A wise man, in whatever office he occupies, fulfills his proper duties, even though he is well aware that right principles have ceased to make progress." That's another story that goes a bit over my head there. The men noted for withdrawal into private life were Po Ai, Shu Chi, Yu Chang, Yi Yi, Chu Chang, Hui of Liu Xia, and Xiao Lian. The master observed, "Those of them who would neither abate their art purpose nor abase themselves, it seems to me, were Po Ai and Shu Chi. Concerning Hui of Liu Xia and Xiao Lian, they abated their art purpose and abased themselves. What they said made for social order, and what they did hit the mark of what men were anxious about, and that is all. Concerning Yu Chang and Yi Yi, though in their seclusions they were immoderate in their utterances, yet they sustained their personal purity and their self-immolation and weighty purpose. But I am different from these. With me there is no inflexible thou shalt or thou shalt not." The Duke of Chu, addressing his son, the Duke of Lu, said, "The wise prince does not neglect his relatives, nor does he cause his chief ministers to be discontented that he is not employing them. He does not dismiss old servants from office without some grave cause for it, nor does he expect one man to be capable of everything." That's the end of Book 18, concerning ancient worthies. What stands out to me there are the 2 stories about the farmers. The first lot I think are it's interesting, but I see them as taking a sort of Taoist perspective. That if a man is truly virtuous, he should withdraw from the world and not worry about it. The second one, again, I don't really understand the story. I suspect it's something to do with some sort of social responsibility. Maybe he's some sort of the equivalent of like a deserter from a ministerial position. I'm not sure. Over my head. Yeah. Swallow water and then we press on it. Book 19. Recorded sayings of some disciples. Zhu Chang said, "A servant of the state, who in the presence of danger offers his life, whose first thought in presence of personal gain is whether it is right, whose first thought in sacrifice is reverence, and whose first thought in mourning is grief, he commands approval." Zhu Chang said, "If a man possesses virtue without its enlarging him, if he believe in truth but without steadfastness, how can you tell whether he has these qualities or not?" The disciples of Zhu Xia asked Zhu Chang concerning friendship. "What does Zhu Xia say?" he inquired. "Zhu Xia says," they replied, "if a man be suitable, associate with him. If he be unsuitable, turn him away." "This is different from what I have been taught," said Zhu Chang. "A wise man honours the worthy and tolerates all. He commends the good and commiserates the incompetent. Am I a man of exceptional worth? And whom among men may I not tolerate? Am I not a man of war? And others would be turning me away. Why should there be this turning of others away then? Zhu Xia said, even the inferior arts certainly have their attraction. To go far into them involves a risk of their becoming an hindrance to progress, so the wise man lets them alone. Zhu Xia said, he who day by day finds out where he is deficient, and who month by month never forgets that with that which he has become proficient, may truly be called a lover of learning. Zhu Xia said, raw culture and a steady will, earnest investigation and personal reflection, virtue is to be found therein. Zhu Xia said, as the various craftsmen dwell in their workshops, that they may do their work effectively, so the wise man applies himself to study that he may carry his wisdom to perfection. Zhu Xia said, the inferior man always embellishes his mistakes. Zhu Xia said, the wise man varies on three aspects. Seen from a distance, he appears stern. When approached, he proves gracious, and if you listen to him, you find him decided in opinion. Zhu Xia said, the wise man obtains the people's confidence before imposing burdens on them. Without confidence, they will think themselves oppressed. He also obtains the confidence of his prince before pointing out his errors, but before attaining such confidence, his prince would deem himself aspersed. Zhu Xia said, he who does not overstep the threshold in the major virtues may have liberty of egress and ingress in the minor ones. Zhu Xia said, the occupant of office, when his duties are finished, should betake himself to study, and the student, when his studies are finished, should betake himself to office. Zhu Yu remarked, my friend Chang, as being Zhu Chang, does things hardly impossible to others, but he is not yet perfect in virtue. So it does things hardly possible to others, but he is not yet perfect in virtue. Zheng Zhu said, what a stately manner Chang puts on. It must be hard to live the perfect life alongside him. Zheng Zhu said, I have heard the master say, though a man may never before have shown what was in him, surely he will do so when he mourns his parents. Zheng Zhu said, I have heard the master observe the filial piety of Meng Chuangzu might in other particulars be possible to other men, but his unaltered maintenance of his father's servants and of his father's administration, these they would hardly find possible. When the chief of the Meng family appointed Yuan Fu as chief criminal judge, the latter come to ask the advice of Zheng Zhu. He replied, the rulers have lost their principles, and for long the people have been disorganized. Hence, when you discover evidence against a man, be grieved for and commiserate him, and take no pleasure in your discovery. Zhu Kang said, the transgression of the wise man are like eclipses of the sun or moon. When he transgresses, all men look at him. When he recovers, all men look up to him. Kang Sun Chao of Wei once inquired of Zhu Kang, from whom did Cheng Ni, as being Confucius, get his learning? The doctrines of Wen and Wu have never yet fallen to the ground, replied Zhu Kang, but have remained amongst men. Gifted men have kept in mind the nobler principles, while others not so gifted have kept in mind the minor, so that nowhere have the doctrines of Wen and Wu been absent. From whom then could our master not learn? And moreover, what need was there for him to have a regular teacher? Shu Sun Wu Shu, talking to the high officers of court, remarked, Zhu Kang is a superior man to Cheng Ni, again as being Confucius. Zhu Fu Ching Po took and told this to Zhu Kang, who replied, one might illustrate the position with the boundary wall of a building. As to my wall, it only reaches to the shoulder, and with a peep you may see whatever is of value in the house and home. The master's wall rises fathoms high, and unless you find the gate and go inside, you cannot see the beauties of the temple and the richness of its host of officers. Those who find the gate perhaps a few. Indeed, does not his honour's remark confirm this view? That's a good metaphor. Shu Sun Wu Shu, having spoken disparagingly of Cheng Ni, Zhu Kang observed, there is no use in doing that, for Cheng Ni cannot be disparaged. The excellencies of others are mounds and hillocks, which may nevertheless be climbed over. But Cheng Ni, he is the sun, the moon, which there is no way of climbing over. And though a man may desire to cut himself off from them, what harm does he do to the sun or moon? He only shows that he has no idea of proportion. Chen Zuqin once said to Zhu Kang, "You are too modest, sir. How can Cheng Ni be considered superior to you?" "An educated man," replied Zhu Kang, "for a single expression is often deemed wise, and for a single expression is often deemed foolish. Hence one should not be heedless in what one says. The impossibility of equaling our master is like the impossibility of scaling a ladder and ascending to the skies. Were our master to obtain control of a country, then, as has been said, he raises his people and they stand. He leads them and they follow. He gives them tranquility and multitudes resort to him. He brings his influence to bear on them, and they live in harmony. His life is glorious, and his death bewailed. How is it possible for him to be equalled?" And that's the end of Book 19, Remarks to the Disciples. So recorded saying to some disciples, should I say. It's interesting. Again, I don't think there's necessarily a strong theme to this particular book, because it is just wisdom of the students of Confucius rather than being on any particular theme. But it's notable the reverence they hold for him, and the metaphor, especially I mentioned, is a good one, of a low wall being enough to see into the house and see the riches within, but a greater wall being obscuring the view. It's interesting. But yeah, I do like that. Like, I guess it feels a bit weird because the disciples are the ones who put it together, but I'm very appreciative of the inclusion of the disciples in this book to the extent they are. I think one of the great flaws of Western philosophy is its habit of attributing to a single person these ideas. Like the idea of Socrates as having all these ideas when his real ideas were mostly laid down by Plato and the discussion with his students, you know? I mean, Confucius is the guy, but I like the fact that the others are still given their due, you know? They were his students and none of them feel that they equal with him. But they also feel that they have things worth saying because he taught them. It's a way of respecting what he taught as well. Anyhow, I'll swallow a water and then we move on to the last book. Jeez. Book 20. Concerning Right Government. Yao said, "O thou Shun, the celestial lineage rests in thy person. Faithfully hold to the golden mean. Should the land become lean, heaven's bounties will forever end towards you." And Shun, in like terms, charged you. Tang said, "I, thy child Li, dare to use a black ox, and dare clearly to state to thee, O most august and sovereign God, that the sinner I dare not spare, nor keep thy ministers, O God, in obscurity, as thy heart, O God, discerns. If I have sinned, let it not concern the country. If my country has sinned, let the sin rest on me." Wu of Chou conferred great largesse, the good being enriched. Although, said he, the tyrant Chu has his host of princes closely related to the throne, they compared not with my men of virtue, and it is upon me that grievances of the people fell. He paid careful attention to the weights and measures, revised the laws and regulations, restored the disused offices, and universal government prevailed. He re-established states that had been extinguished, restored the lines of broken succession, called to office men who had exiled themselves, and all the people gave him their arts. What he laid stress on were the people's food, mourning for the dead, and sacrifices. By his magnanimity he won all. By his good faith he gained the people's confidence. By his diligence he achieved his ends, and by his justice all were gratified. Zhu Chang inquired of Confucius, saying, "How should a man act to achieve the proper administration of government?" The master replied, "Let him honour the 5 good and banish the 4 bad rules. then he will be a worthy administrator. What is meant by the 5 good rules? Asked Zhu Chang. That the ruler, replied the master, be benevolent or beneficent without expending the public revenue. That he exact service without arousing dissatisfaction. His desires never denigrate the creed. That he be dignified but without disdain. And they be commanding but not domineering. What is meant by beneficent without expenditure? Asked Zhu Chang. The master replied, to benefit the people by the development of their natural resources. Is not this a public benefaction without expense to the revenue? If he selects suitable works to extract from them, who then will be dissatisfied? If his desires are good for the others, and he secures it, how can he be greedy? The wise ruler, without considering whether the persons concerned are many or few, or the affair small or great, never permits himself to slight them. Is this not to be dignified without disdain? The wise ruler arrays himself properly, in robe and cap, throws a nobility into his look, so that men looking upon him in his dignity stand in awe of him. Is this not commanding without being domineering? What is the meaning of the 4 bad rules? Asked Zhu Chang. The master replied, putting men to death without having taught them their duty, which may be called cruelty. Expecting the completion of works when no warning has been given, which may be called oppression. Reminiscence in ordering and then demand for instant performance, which may be called robbery, and likewise when giving reward to men, offering them in grudging fashion, which may be called being merely an official. The master said, he who does not know the divine law cannot become a noble man. He who does not know the laws of right conduct cannot form his character. He who does not know the force of words cannot know men. And that is the end of Book 20 concerning right government. And that is the end of the Analects of Confucius. That only took 3.5 hours. So then, let me have a drink of water and get us to somewhere a bit more comfortable, and I'll do some closing remarks, shall I? Okay. So, what can be said about the Analects of Confucius? How can we sum up, in a few short minutes, a book which has for thousands of years stood as the core central text of one of the philosophies of one of the world's oldest and most powerful nations, and indeed influenced much of the world's philosophy? I've got no bloody idea, of course, but there are things we can say about it. It reveres piety to those who are in higher station, but not blind piety, and indeed expects piety in turn with those of lower station. It expects one to do one's best in advising and guiding those who are above them, but also to be willing to walk away if their advice is not heeded. It expects one to maintain one's own virtue, not to be without all virtue, but not to carry those virtues so far that they become vices, not to hold them against people, not to turn people away. Thank you, Wilde. And indeed, it's a kind philosophy, not without its flaws, but a philosophy that seeks to make a world good. And a philosophy which is clearly influenced by the time period in which it was written, the Warring States, a time of great unrest. You're very welcome that way. I hope you've enjoyed it. And in seeing that, you can see the need of a world that is, I appreciate it. I always appreciate you being here. I do enjoy reading these. But you can see, as I say, these are written in a time of unrest, where the need for order is higher, which informs a lot of them. They're about reverence for those who are rightfully in power, and disdain for those who are without it. And for all that they speak of filial piety and of seeking to respect authority, they also see rejecting unjust and false authority as an equally righteous thing. They're not as spoken, though obviously that's not spoken of as much, given that it is against the interest of those that are in authority. Overall, it is a much better text than I gave it credit for before starting. I've enjoyed it quite thoroughly. I'm planning to do all 4 of those in the coming, maybe not week, but in the next couple of weeks. And if they're all as good as that, I think we're in for a good time. But yeah. Again, sorry about the redeems, I'll get them fixed. And if any of you have any thoughts on the nature of Confucius, I'd be happy to hear them. Or if you have redeems you'd like to pull off now, or if there are redeems that are broken but you'd like me to do, let me know. I'm happy to do them this time. I'll take a moment to have another quick drink and rest while I'll give you the option to do so, and then I'll think about it. Right then. Let's see, is there anyone live? That is a good question, Naska. Ooh. Okay. I'll do that last, since that is a goodbye message, but thanks for that. There's no one really live. Well, I should read it. There's fans live. I'm so sure we'll read in the flat, but yeah. The idea of the ability to gain knowledge without experience is an interesting one. I suppose at the time there was still scholarship and books, but the idea of the amount of knowledge able to be obtained is probably be very appealing to Confucius. But I think that also the abundance of false knowledge would also distress him quite greatly. It's a new virtue that a person has to have. You have to be able to, how'd you put it? To ascertain falsehood from truth, to create one's foundation. And as it is the way of creating one's foundation, it's much harder, I think, to become self-educated in the same way that he himself was. I think he'd struggle with it. A good thought, something worth reflecting on. There are a few of these I do want to come back to. And I mean, some of them are remarkably prescient, like the best of men is not like a machine. I haven't released it that way. But yeah. Lots to think over. Anyhow, let's see. Let's take care of that redeem then, shall I, before we go? Let me just adjust my mic settings real quick. Good night, everyone. And with that, I do bid you adieu. I do thank you once again, all of you, for stopping by. Oh, yeah, let's get the raid going. I do thank all of you for stopping by. We're going to be raiding over to Flannel, who friend of the channel, who's currently doing Minecraft. You're very welcome. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you've gotten something out of this. What was what? Wait, what was what? Oh, the goodbye. Yeah, Plague redeemed the whole close thing redeemed, so yeah. But yeah, I do appreciate you being here. I hope you've enjoyed the stream tonight, and I hope you got something out of it. We're going to head over to Flannel now briefly. But yeah, I hope that you have a lovely rest of your day, whatever time period it is for you, and for the next 24 hours until my next stream. Oh, that's something. I am doing a little collab with Ivy and Friends tomorrow, which I won't be there. You are here for every stream. How do you not have enough points? Crazy. Yeah, very welcome. Yeah, collab tomorrow over on Ivy's channel. I'll probably be streaming something short. Probably I'll do the other Nikolai Gogol one just tomorrow. But yeah, that'll be up. But yeah, as always, hope you have a good rest of your day. And thank you all for being here. And ta-ra.